The throne of the Mechas. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 726 Lessons. General. The signal of the malevolence suddenly disappeared. On the Gloy, an officer stood in front of the superwave detector with a look of seeing a ghost on his face. Disappeared? How is it possible? Lieutenant General Bartow was slightly startled and walked quickly to the detector. The light spot representing the malevolence did disappear on the screen. General, we can't detect the signal of the malevolence. The officers in front of several other detection instruments also reported one after another. What's the situation? Did you turn on the mirage system and become invisible? Lieutenant General Bartow was confused. He had never encountered such a situation. General, even if it is the mirage system, it is useless to become invisible when we have locked the signal, an adjutant reminded. Of course I know. Lieutenant General Bartow's face was a little gloomy. Then, who can tell me what happened? Why did the malevolence suddenly disappear? General, I'm not sure. The malevolence seems to have entered the subspace through the wormhole. However, there is no energy reaction of the wormhole in front. In fact, there is nothing in the starry sky in front. The adjutant's face was also full of confusion. What the hell? Lieutenant General Bartow frowned, and he suddenly remembered a famous saying of a galaxy travel writer: anything can happen in the universe. Just when Lieutenant General Bartow hesitated, the Gloy suddenly received a message. Gloy, you don't have permission. Please leave this starfield immediately, otherwise, you will bear the consequences. Lieutenant General Bartow was stunned. This strange and inexplicable message actually threatened the Empire's starship in the Empire's territory? Hahaha, that's it. Lieutenant General Bartow's eyes turned, and he immediately understood. Xia Xingchen actually played such a childish trick with me, and actually wanted to scare me away. It's ridiculous. The Gloy continued to move forward, and prepared to bombard the area where the evil thought disappeared. Yes, General. The soldiers on the starship did not feel that there was anything wrong with Lieutenant General Bartow's order, and responded loudly. They all thought that the evil mind had activated the mirage system to hide its body, but actually shut down its engine and stayed in place, hoping to use this method to lure the Gloy away. Gloy, you don't have permission. Leave immediately. The message came again, and this time the tone was very stern. Vice Admiral Bartow ignored this message and ordered the main guns to attack in the direction where the evil mind disappeared. Boom. The main guns of the Gloy are two high-power plasma cannons. The huge barrels of 50 meters contain unimaginable terrible power. After a short charge, two beams of light tore through the universe and rushed away against the black lead background. The result of this shooting, of course, was a miss. Vice Admiral Bartow was surprised. He originally thought that the evil mind had activated the mirage system and was hiding in place. However, things did not seem to develop as he imagined. Vice Admiral Bartow did not know that the rash attack of the Gloy had been regarded as a hostile act by the Royal Scientific Research Institute of the Coffin Star. In the research institute, a blonde woman wearing a white research suit and black framed glasses, with a frosty face, pressed the red button on the table and said in a cold voice, "Chrissa, I order you to go into battle immediately and teach the Glory a little lesson." "Meredith, do you want to sink this battleship?" said a young girl. "If the other party threatens your life, you can sink it." The blonde woman's voice was cold and seemed to have no emotion. "Great, Chrissa likes this job." The young female voice became excited. The evil thought had already passed through the thin atmosphere of the Coffin Star. The naked eye could see the desolation of the surface of the planet. Xia Xingchen didn't know where to land. At this time, a low mountain cracked from the middle, revealing a dark passage. It turned out that the research institute was hidden underground on the Coffin Star. Swish. Just when Xia Xingchen was surprised, a silver-white mecha flew out from underground at a very fast speed. This mecha looked very strange. It was taller than an ordinary mecha, 7 meters high. It had no wings behind it, and no weapons or equipment could be seen. The mecha flew at such a high speed that it could not even be seen with the naked eye. One could only see a silver-white stream of light across the sky. Even if Xia Xingchen was driving the Revenger Knight and turned on the overclocking mode, he could not match the speed of this silver mecha. S-class mecha master. Xia Xingchen understood instantly that only an S-class mecha master could make a mecha have such a speed. In just a blink of an eye, the silver mecha crossed a distance of dozens of kilometers and arrived in front of the evil mind. The mecha stopped in front of the evil mind for less than a second, as if it was a little curious, but the next moment, it turned into a stream of light and flew away. It was not until this time that the other crew members on the evil mind, except Xia Xingchen, realized that the silver white stream of light was actually a mecha. Oh my god. Why can a mecha be so fast? B also was shocked. Yugo calculated in his mind that if he drove the Tami warrior against the silver mecha, his chance of winning was close to zero. With his mental power of level 32, Xia Xingchen keenly noticed the difference of the silver mecha. When the silver mecha was flying, the armor on its body flickered and emitted a white light, which actually gathered into the shape of lightning. What kind of device is this? Xia Xingchen was extremely shocked. With his knowledge, he could only recognize that the silver mecha was equipped with a mental force sensing device that was different from ordinary mechas. But he didn't know what this device was used for. Watching the silver mecha passing through the atmosphere and flying towards the glory, Xia Xingchen's heart skipped a beat. What does that silver mecha want to do? The crew of the glory were also shocked and confused like Xia Xingchen. They were all shocked when they saw the silver mecha suddenly appear from the starry sky. After a brief shock, Lieutenant General Bato was the first to react. He thought the pilot in the mecha was Xia Xingchen, and he burst into laughter. Xia Xingchen, don't fight like a trapped beast. It's useless. Since you want a mecha battle, then I'll play with you. Lieutenant General Bato immediately ordered the glory to open the hatch and let all 50 mechas on board the fleet go out to blow up the silver mecha and become a cosmic firework. The glory belongs to the Imperial Vanguard. The mechas on the ship are relatively old. They are all mechas produced by the Tang Dynasty group a few years ago. They are called blade mechas. The parameters of this mecha are average, but the performance is stable and the failure rate is very low, so it is favored by the Vanguard. Although the performance of the blade mecha is average, the mecha divisions on the glory are basically sea level, and they are very familiar with the blade mecha, and their combat effectiveness should not be underestimated. 50 red painted blade mechas came out in full force, surrounding the silver white mecha in the middle, and the laser muzzles in their hands were gathering light and could be fired at any time. Seeing this scene, Xia Xingchen couldn't help but break into a cold sweat for the silver mecha. Chapter 727 Gap. Evil Mind, slow down your descent and keep hovering. After giving the order, Xia Xingchen turned to Yugo and said, lend me your Tami warrior mech. Master, you are the original owner of the Tami warrior mech. Yugo's face showed surprise. Are you planning to drive the Tami warrior mech to help the silver mech? Xia Xingchen nodded. I do have this plan. Even an S-class mech master may not be a match for the glory. The 50 blade mechas on the glory are indeed of relatively backward models. Most of the mech masters who drive these mechas are C-class mech masters. On the Hell Island of the Northern Empire, Xia Xingchen once had a brilliant record of fighting against many enemies alone and destroying hundreds of mechas. However, Xia Xingchen had teammates to cover him, and the evil mind is a firepower distraction, coupled with Carlos's super technology and the firepower support of S-class mech master Popovich. All the advantages added together allowed him to have such an exaggerated record. With one person's strength, he fought against 50 C-class mecha masters. The opponent was not a mob of the chosen organization on Hell Island, but a battle-hardened mecha squadron. Moreover, the opponent had a medium-sized destroyer as fire support. Even if the driver of the silver mecha was an S-class mecha master, Xia Xingchen did not think it would have any chance of winning. Xia Xingchen had already made up his mind that once the silver mecha fell into a disadvantage, he would drive the Tami warrior mecha to attack and meet the S-class mecha master. However, at this moment, a series of light blue halos appeared on the body of the silver mecha, shining on the outer shell of the mecha like electric sparks, slowly moving from the head to the legs, as if a layer of light blue halo was put on the body. The halo maintained a certain frequency, constantly appearing from the body of the mecha, becoming more and more dense. when the huge body of the silver mecha, which was 7 meters high, was shrouded in blue halo, the mecha suddenly began to move, and the speed increased again. Whoosh! The naked eye could no longer capture the shape of the silver mecha, and could only see a thin bright line. Thunder. In everyone's mind, the lightning and thunder that kept rolling in the dense dark clouds on a rainy night appeared involuntarily. As fast as lightning, as swift as thunder. Swish. In just a moment, the thin bright line formed by the silver mecha passed through the 10-blade mechas in the front. The scene was like threading a needle. A white bright line under the dark background passed through the small red dots without any pause along the way. The blade mechas that were penetrated did not explode. When everyone was surprised, the 10 mechas suddenly fell apart and turned into hundreds of fragments. Except for the cockpit, which remained intact, the rest of the blade mechas were cut into pieces. And this was just the beginning. The silver mecha still maintained a very high speed and then penetrated the remaining 40 blade mechas. The mecha masters of the blade mechas were all panicked, and they were in a hurry and tilted their firepower towards the ghostly silver mechas. However, their actions were in vain. The shells and laser beams in the sky could not touch the silver mecha at all. It was like a light dancer, dancing the death waltz in the battlefield with graceful and clever steps. The battle lasted less than 10 seconds. The white bright line passed through 50 red dots, and all 50 blade mechas sank and turned into fragments all over the sky. This is not a battle, but a massacre. A one-sided massacre with fewer enemies. This mysterious and powerful S-class mecha master was very measured and did not destroy the cockpit of the blade mecha. The lives of these C-class mecha masters were safe. Doing so is 100 times more difficult than destroying the blade mecha directly. The next moment, the silver mecha was above the destroyer Gloy, and it finally stopped. Only then could people see its figure. Countless leaping blue sparks floated on its shell, and a huge ship-slashing sword that was 6 meters long inexplicably appeared in its hand. This ship-slashing sword was blue in color, with sparks dancing on the blade. It seemed to have no substance, but was made of lightning. Inside the Cambridge of the Gloy, through the transparent skylight above, Vice Admiral Bartow's face was full of astonishment. He had not even recovered from the shock of the annihilation of the blade mech. Swish. The ship-slashing sword fell fiercely, cutting the barrel of the Gloy's main gun, a 50-meter-long high-power plasma cannon. The barrel of the plasma cannon is made of high-strength, high-temperature resistant Raman alloy, and is the hardest part of the ship. Even if the Gloy's nuclear fusion reactor exploded, and the hull was completely melted, these two huge main guns would remain. However, the blue ship-slashing sword had almost no obstacles, and cut off the Gloy's main gun like cutting tofu. Then, the silver mech took the huge barrel as a trophy, and returned to the coffin star triumphantly like an ant dragging a huge piece of food. The whole process took no more than a minute. The shock that could not be expressed in words swept everyone's heart. Xia Xingchen clenched his hands tightly, and he didn't even notice that his nails were piercing his flesh and bleeding. Is this the true strength of an S-class mecha master? Xia Xingchen muttered to himself, his face pale. This was not the first time Xia Xingchen had seen an S-class mecha master. He had fought with Popovich, who was also an S-class mecha master, and he didn't feel that there was a big gap between him and the S-class mecha master. Even when Popovich didn't drive his main mecha, Xia Xingchen could still have a slight advantage. But now, Xia Xingchen knew that, even if he was driving the Revenge Knight and his mental power was at its peak, he would definitely not last more than 3 seconds against this silver mecha. This was the gap. A huge gap comparable to the abyss. And the reason for such a gap was not the mecha master's combat experience and mental power level. It was the gap in technology. The Royal Scientific Research Institute of the Coffin Star represents the highest level of human technology in the Milky Way. Popovich has been in seclusion for many years and has not been concerned with worldly affairs. Although the Magneto mecha he built at a huge cost also has a very high level of technology. However, most of the parts of Magneto's mecha were made by Northern Heavy Industries. The technological level of Northern Heavy Industries is not as good as that of Tang Dynasty Group. The gap between Tang Dynasty Group and Lin Jiaxing is even greater. In other words, Popovich's Magneto mecha looks good on the surface, but compared with this mysterious silver mecha, its technological level has lagged behind by a whole era. Lin Jiaxing, the forefront of human technology. What level of technology has this place reached? Xia Xingchen was looking forward to it. Nicholas has the existence of the gods behind him, and the Qin royal family also has Ling Jiaxing behind them. An empire that has lasted for 1,000 years cannot be without a little foundation. All along, whether it is Regent Qin or Emperor Qin Zhi, their attitudes are very arrogant, and they look down on the north. Because Ling Jiaxing is the source of their confidence. If they really fight, even if the Northern Empire has God's refined gold, the Galactic Empire may not lose. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 728 Hollow Planet. In the bridge of the Gloy, Vice Admiral Bartow was stunned, his face full of dull expression. He still hadn't recovered from the shock. He couldn't believe that his medium destroyer Gloy and the entire mecha squad on board were defeated by a mecha. However, facts are facts. The first thing Vice Admiral Bartow reacted to was a sense of fear. The silver mecha was obviously not an enemy. Although it destroyed the main gun and mecha squad of the Gloy, it left room and did not hurt the life of the mecha division. Otherwise, Vice Admiral Bartow didn't even dare to think about it. In a non-war state, the mecha division of the entire mecha squad was all killed. Even if Vice Admiral Bartow was Qin Yun's capable subordinate, he would inevitably go to the military court. What on earth was the matter with that mecha? Vice Admiral Bartow was at a loss. He exhausted his imagination and couldn't think of why such a powerful mecha appeared in the desolate southern Great Cross Star region. At this time, the Gloy received another strange message with only one word: get out. Lieutenant General Bartow did not hesitate and immediately sent a small space rescue ship to rescue 50 C-class mecha divisions to the Gloy and then fled this starfield in a hurry. Lieutenant General Bartow was still in shock and hurriedly wrote a detailed report on what happened in the southern Great Cross Starfield and submitted it to the Shia and Star Military Department. During the long wait of several hours, Regent Qin Yun personally video-linked the Gloy battleship. On the huge screen of the Gloy bridge, Qin Yun's face was gloomy. Because the distance was too far, Qin Yun's expression and voice had obvious delays. However, this delay could not stop Qin Yun's endless anger. Bartow, look at what you have done. Lieutenant General Bartow was terrified. Your Highness, I don't know. Until now, Lieutenant General Bartow still didn't know who he had provoked. He had a few guesses in his mind, but they were all a million miles away from the truth. You don't know? Of course, you don't know that you have caused such a big disaster. The most hateful thing is that I have to clean up your mess. You bastard, get back here right now and spend the rest of your life on a primitive planet in the Wild Star region where you can honestly farm and live your old age. Qin Yun cursed loudly and disconnected the video link. At this moment, Qin Yun was holding a letter from Lingju Star, which was written by Meredith, the director of the Royal Scientific Institute. In the letter, Meredith criticized the Gloy and said that he had submitted a video to the Council of Elders. This video was a clear image of the Gloy firing at Lingju Star. With this evidence, even if Qin Yun was the regent, he would not be able to protect Lieutenant General Bartow. If this matter continues to be investigated, Qin Yun will also be involved. The only way now is to abandon Lieutenant General Bartow. Qin Yun's heart ached. Bartow used to be his adjutant, followed him through life and death, and even risked his life to save him. However, Qin Yun could only dismiss Bartow and let him go home to retire. Qin Yun lost one of his most capable subordinates for no reason. Meredith. Qin Yun's mind flashed with a picture of a cold and beautiful woman wearing black framed glasses. He shook his head. He had no way to deal with this woman. Xia Xingchen. It's all because of you. I lost a general. Qin Yun had no choice but to vent his anger on Xia Xingchen. Don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you hide in Lingju Star. Qin Yun's face was gloomy. He waved his hand to call an adjutant and ordered, go tell Caesar that I will give him 6 months. I don't want Xia Xingchen to leave Lingju Star alive. The evil thoughts landed on the coffin star and passed through the tunnel under the mountain to enter the underground of the planet. Passing through the long and dark tunnel, Xia Xingchen's heart was extremely excited, and he imagined what the Royal Institute of Science would look like in his mind. You know, the institute was built on the basis of the remains of the celestial beings. What exactly do the remains of the celestial beings look like? Is it a magnificent palace? Or a smooth geometric body full of technology? Or is it a steel jungle of countless steel and concrete? However, when the evil thoughts passed through the tunnel and came to the underground, everyone was completely shocked by the scene in front of them. Sky. Xia Xingchen's first feeling was that he had drilled out from underground, and there was the sky under his feet. That's right, there was a blue sky under Xia Xingchen's feet, and there was even a sun in the center that was shining and radiating heat. Rivers, lakes, mountains, everything is available here, and there are even high-rise buildings, and many humans live in a city. Xia Xingchen had a strong sense of spatial inversion. He knew very well that he had clearly passed through the tunnel and came to the underground of the Coffin Star. Xia Xingchen, who was born in a mining family, was very familiar with the underground. The underground should be dark and full of soil, minerals, and rocks. However, there is actually a universe under the Lingju Star? What is going on? After a brief shock, Xia Xingchen finally understood. Lingju Star is hollow. Just like a balloon, it is completely hollow, with only a thin shell on the outside. These rivers, lakes, mountains, and high-rise buildings are hanging upside down against the spherical shell. An upside-down hollow world. Xia Xingchen didn't know how this hollow world was formed, but it was obviously not formed naturally, but by man. It was done by heaven and man. This is a technology that humans cannot understand at all. Space is powerful. Facing the empty space as big as a planet, Xia Xingchen felt a real pressure. He even felt like worshipping. The object of worship is not the illusory god, but this technology that is like a miracle. Everyone on the evil thought had this feeling in their hearts, marveling at the insignificance of human beings. Under the instructions, the evil thought landed on the nearby helipad. Except for Xia Xingchen, no one else was allowed to disembark and could only stay on board and wait. When Xia Xingchen got off the spaceship, she saw a blonde woman in a white robe and black framed glasses. She looked to be about 25 or 26 years old, with messy blonde hair like thatch, and an endless indifference on her face. The eyes hidden behind the black framed glasses were the color of the sky, shining with the brilliance of wisdom. I have to admit that this woman is very beautiful, with delicate features and skin as delicate as porcelain. Even her unkempt hair and the indifference on her face that keeps people away from her could not hide her sexy beauty of an intellectual woman. I'm Meredith, the director of the institute. You can call me director, or whatever. Meredith came up and did not shake hands with Xia Xingchen, nor did she even make any friendly gestures. She just introduced herself coldly, as if it was a routine. Meredith, what a beautiful name. Beautiful lady, I'm Xia Xingchen. It's our first meeting. Please take care of me. Xia Xingchen bowed gracefully and said politely with the style of an aristocrat. Me? Pretty lady? Meredith was slightly stunned, and a smile appeared on her cold face for the first time. I'm sorry, Marquis Xia Xingchen. Flattery has no effect on me. You are handsome and good at pleasing women. But this does not mean that you can join the institute. Our institute never needs trash. Chapter 729. The Same Arrogance. After hearing Meredith's words, Xia Xingchen realized that, even if he was a marquis and had Zhuo Leheng's letter of introduction, it would not be easy to join the Royal Institute of Science. Xia Xingchen smiled and said, Madam, you seem to have confused me with those noble dinders who came here to gild themselves. I came here just to borrow your large computer. Meredith said coldly, I'm not confused. In fact, only members of the institute can enter the institute. If you want to enter the institute, you must take the entrance examination to prove that you have the most basic qualifications. Xia Xingchen was speechless for a while and shrugged his shoulders. You are the director here. You have the final say. Xia Xingchen still had some aspirations for joining the Royal Institute of Science. What's more, even if the large computer of the institute wants to completely analyze the god's refined gold, it will take some time. Since you agree, then please follow me, Marquis. Meredith was not optimistic about Xia Xingchen because he was too young. Moreover, he had the killing aura of a soldier. Meredith didn't look down on soldiers. In fact, many of the top scientists in the human race have military ranks. However, at Xia Xingchen's age, he is already a colonel. His long military career means that he has not been to college properly, so he is probably a rough man with no education. Meredith glanced at Xia Xingchen with her golden eyes. What she hated most was dealing with rough men who knew nothing, even if he was a distinguished marquis. At this moment, a sudden airwave hit. Xia Xingchen turned around and was shocked to find that the silver mecha was slowly landing on the tarmac. The mecha landed, the cover of the cockpit opened, and a girl of 16 or 17 jumped out of it. She immediately ran towards Meredith, her face full of excitement, and she threw herself on her. "Director, did you see everything just now? Krissa did a great job. You have to reward Krissa." Xia Xingchen looked at this little girl who was only 17 or 18 years old and full of childishness with a surprised face. She was very beautiful, with long silver white hair and snow white skin. She was not tall, less than 1.6 meters, with red eyes. She looked like a little girl full of childishness. It was hard for Xia Xingchen to imagine that she was an S-class mecha master at such a young age. An imperceptible maternal love flashed across Meredith's cold face, but her expression was still stern. The mecha battle at the beginning was not bad. But why did you bring back a piece of scrap metal? Krissa puffed out her small chest, her face full of pride. "Are you talking about the plasma cannon on the spacecraft? That's my trophy." Meredith rubbed her temple. "But your combat power has filled up the warehouse. You have to take the time to clean it up this weekend." "Ah." Krissa was dumbfounded. "But you clearly promised me that you would take me out to play on the weekend." Meredith obviously had no way to deal with this little lolly with silver hair and glanced at Xia Xingchen. "Krissa, the weekend plan is cancelled. I have a lot of work to do, such as arranging an admission test for this marquis." Krissa was stunned for a moment, looking at Xia Xingchen with hatred in her eyes, and shouted, "What marquis? He's just an idiot anyway." Xia Xingchen was helpless, touched his nose, and looked at the S-class mecha master who was only 16 or 17 years old. "Idiot, maybe." Xia Xingchen had to admit that, although he had been recognized as a genius wherever he went, he might really be a fool in Lingju Star, a place full of geniuses. Meredith is also a fool. Carissa wrinkled her nose and looked like she was about to cry. She stomped her feet in anger and turned to run towards the woods. She was very fast, with light blue electric sparks floating under her feet. In just a blink of an eye, her figure disappeared without a trace. Xia Xingchen saw Carissa crying and running away. He turned around and saw Meredith indifferent. He asked in surprise, "Aren't you going to chase her?" "Chase her? Why?" Meredith shrugged his shoulders. "Because she is still a child. And she ran away crying. Maybe she will encounter some danger." Xia Xingchen couldn't think of a suitable reason. In his heart, a man's duty is to protect women, especially underage girls like Carissa. "You are really considerate to girls. But don't worry, Lord Marquis, no one in the entire Coffin Star is a match for Carissa." Meredith smiled again. Xia Xingchen followed Meredith and came to the hall of the institute. From time to time, researchers in white robes walked through the hall. Most of them wore glasses and looked hurried, but when they saw Meredith, they all stopped and respectfully called out, "Director." It can be seen that Meredith has a high reputation in Coffin Star. Meredith yawned, looking like she hadn't slept well, and turned to Xia Xingchen and said, "My Lord Marquis, I'm sorry, I have to prepare for your exam. In the next period of time, I will have someone take you to visit the Coffin Star." Xia Xingchen nodded, her face full of curiosity, and said, "Okay." Meredith turned and left, but before he took 2 steps, he suddenly remembered something, and turned to Xia Xingchen and said, "Okay, my Lord Marquis, I already know your purpose from Mr. Zuo Leheng's letter. You seem to have obtained some unknown materials, and need the research institute to help you analyze them." Xia Xingchen nodded and said, "The god's gold is on my spaceship." Meredith said, "Oh, and I'll arrange for someone to get it." Xia Xingchen hurriedly said, "That is very important material. I hope you can get it as soon as possible. Time waits for no one." Meredith looked arrogant and smiled softly. "Lord Marquis, you don't seem to know enough about the Coffin Star. The precious materials you have never seen before may just be defective products that have flowed out from us. Forget it, you will understand. If you are lucky enough to join the institute smoothly. Meredith walked away proudly in high heels, leaving Xia Xingchen with an arrogant back. Xia Xingchen smiled bitterly. The arrogance of the imperial nobles seems to be inherited from the same source. This Meredith clearly looked down on herself, and like Qin Yun, she looked down on the god's gold. Weakness and ignorance are not obstacles to survival, but arrogance is. Xia Xingchen suddenly remembered the words of a writer in the Earth era a long time ago, which was indeed a true insight. Xia Xingchen. A surprised female voice sounded behind Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen turned around and saw Zhuo Lehung's granddaughter Zhuo Qing looking at her in astonishment. Zhuo Qing walked up quickly with joy on her face. Xia Xingchen, it's really you. I didn't expect that I would meet you here. Chapter 730, The Tomb of the Celestial Being. Xia Xingchen was slightly stunned when he saw Zhuo Qing appear in front of him. But he changed his mind and realized that it was not difficult to understand why Zhuo Qing appeared on Lingjiu Star. Zhuo Qing's family was well educated. Her grandfather Zhuo Lehung was the empire's leading mecha designer. She had studied mecha design since she was a child and had inherited her grandfather's true teachings. She was very famous when she was in the military academy. However, Zhuo Qing was younger than Xia Xingchen and was able to enter Lingjiu Star mostly because of her family's relationship. It is a joy to meet an old friend in a foreign land. Xia Xingchen smiled and looked at Zhuo Qing. Miss Zhuo, long time no see. Zhuo Qing curled her lips. It's been a short time since we last met, and you have become so distant. You even call me miss. I heard that you were on the Lingjiu Star, and I immediately volunteered to be your guide. Xia Xingchen then realized that Zhuo Qing was the guide arranged by Meredith. She touched her nose awkwardly and called her by her name. Okay, Zhuo Qing, I'm wrong. I'll buy you a cup of coffee as compensation. Zhuo Qing was happy, walked over with a smile, and grabbed Xia Xingchen's wrist. Keep your word. I know there is a coffee shop nearby that has great coffee. This is a coffee shop without a signboard, located at the corner of the street. There is a huge fountain in front of the door, and several children are playing on the benches nearby. Xia Xingchen and Zhuo Qing sat by the window, looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window. Xia Xingchen looked a little dazed. He didn't feel that he was inside a planet at all. The Lingjiu Star gave people the feeling of a paradise. Xia Xingchen ordered a cup of black coffee without sugar. He likes the original bitterness of coffee. Zhuo Qing ordered a cup of cappuccino. The bright silver coffee spoon slowly drew an arc in the cup. She looked at Xia Xingchen. The once ignorant boy. His face has traces of time. The immaturity in his eyes has turned into boundless depth. However, it must be admitted that Xia Xingchen's unique cold military temperament fascinates the girl. Zhuo Qing, tell me about it. I'm very interested in Lingjiu Star. Xia Xingchen's voice woke Zhuo Qing from his daze. Zhuo Qing coughed to cover up his embarrassment. Okay, you can ask me questions. I will try my best to answer them. Lingjiu Star, how was it formed? There are also some basic situations, such as population. Xia Xingchen thought about it and asked the first question. Lingjiu Star is 1/3 the size of Xianyuan Star and is a hollow sphere. There is no atmosphere outside the planet, and no one lives there. Everyone lives inside the planet. There are 2 cities on this planet. One is the Science City, which is where we are. The other is the Civilian City. Outside the Science City, there are no buildings, only tents and low shacks. There are nearly 3,000 people in the Science City, and more than 10,000 in the Civilian District. Zhuo Qing introduced some basic information about Lingjiu Star. Xia Xingchen was a little surprised. Aren't there only scientists on Lingjiu Star? There are also civilians? Zhuo Qing smiled slightly and lowered her voice. Scientists? You should know that those scientists are all brain workers. To put it bluntly, they are lazy and don't know how to distinguish between grains. If there were only scientists on the entire planet, they would have starved to death long ago. And only the imperial nobles could join the institute. In order to live more comfortably, these nobles brought their servants and families to take care of their food and daily life. However, these civilians are not eligible to enter the Science City and can only live in the civilian area outside the city. Strict procedures are required to enter the science city. Xia Xingchen thought about it, and it was indeed the case. If he officially joined the institute, the crew on the evil mind, such as Bielsa and Hugo, would have to live in the civilian area temporarily. Except for these two cities, the rest of Lingjiu Star is a restricted area. You cannot enter without permission to avoid danger. Of course, most of those places are desolate red land, and there is nothing fun. Zuo King continued. Xia Xingchen nodded, and had a basic understanding of the general situation of Lingjiu Star. As for how Lingjiu Star was formed, I actually don't understand it either. After all, the technology of the celestial beings is beyond humans' imagination. According to current research results, Lingjiu Star was not formed naturally, but is a completely man-made creation. Zuo King drank a cup of coffee and said slowly, in the southern Great Cross Star region, the 4 stars are of different sizes, and have different gravitational pulls. However, the location of Lingjiu Star is exactly at the center point of the 4 stars. The huge gravitational pull of the stars achieves a delicate balance at this point, so, the hollow sphere of Lingjiu Star will not collapse due to its own gravity. Well, to put it in an analogy, it's like 4 hands grabbing a balloon in 4 directions. Xia Xingchen showed astonishment on his face. Lingjiu Star cannot be observed from the outside world. Is it because of gravity? Zuo King nodded and said, the universe is so big that there are all kinds of wonders. The huge gravitational pull of the 4 stars distorts the light, so it is impossible to detect here from the outside world. God knows, how did humans discover this planet back then? Xia Xingchen frowned slightly, looked at the sun hanging in the sky through the window, and asked, what's the matter with that ball of fire? A small artificial star? Zuo King smiled and covered her lips with her hands. It is indeed man-made, but it was created by the celestial beings. The ball of fire in the sky is also the creation of the celestial beings, and it is unknown how many years it has been burning. With time, its temperature will change. During the day it is the sun, and at night it is the moon emitting cold light. The whole cycle is roughly 36 hours. Now the general research direction of the institute is to study this ball of fire in the sky. 36 hours. Xia Xingchen touched his chin, thoughtfully. At least, we know that there is a satellite similar to the moon on the planet, where the celestial beings are born. Who knows? Zuo King shrugged and said helplessly, there is a saying on the Lingjiu Star, the heart of the celestial beings cannot be measured. It is as ridiculous for humans to guess the thoughts of the celestial beings as it is for summer insects to talk about ice. Haha, we humans are like this, hoping to guess what others are thinking. At least, the first group of people who arrived at the Lingjiu Star thought this was the tomb of the celestial beings. Xia Xingchen shrugged. Grave? Why do you say that? Zuo King had not been on Lingjiu Star for long, and it was the first time he heard this strange statement. Lingjiu Star. Lingjiu means coffin. The celestial beings chose the special astronomical wonder of the Southern Great Cross and made a hollow planet here. Does it look like a huge coffin? It seems that the celestial beings also understand Feng Shui and chose this Feng Shui treasure land as their grave. Xia Xingchen joked. Impossible. The celestial beings are eternal and will never die, so of course they don't need to choose their own grave. However, your statement also makes sense. Maybe the first batch of humans who arrived at Lingjiu Star really thought that the celestial beings were just like humans, and they also had birth, aging, illness and death. Zuo King stuck out her tongue mischievously. Chapter 731 Super S-Class Psychic. Xia Xingchen already had a basic understanding of the general situation of Lingjiu Star. There was no doubt that Lingjiu Star still hid countless mysteries, but Zuo King had not been here for long, and it was obvious that nothing more could be asked from her. By the way, how much can you help me with the entrance examination? I have no idea what the female director named Meredith will take. Do you have any relevant information? Xia Xingchen asked about the main business. Whether he could pass the entrance examination was a matter of life and death for him. The experience of the Gloi had made Xia Xingchen completely understand. Qin Yun was determined to eliminate him. If Xia Xingchen could successfully join the institute, Qin Yun would not dare to act openly due to the pressure from Lingjiu Star. If Xia Xingchen failed the entrance examination and was expelled from Lingju Star, I believe that the evil mind would not be able to fly out of the southern Great Cross Star region and would be bombed into cosmic debris by the artillery fire on the starship. Zuo King shook her head with a helpless expression. I'm sorry, Xia Xingchen, I can't help you with the entrance examination. Why? Xia Xingchen was slightly stunned. I just told you the scope of the examination. Is this also confidential? Zuo King sighed. Xingchen, that's not what I meant. Of course I want to help you. Even if it is a secret, given our relationship, I will definitely take the risk to tell you. But, I really don't know. In fact, whether you can become a member of the institute, the decision is only in the hands of Meredith. You mean, let me leave it to fate? Xia Xingchen raised his head, with a bitter smile on his face. What I mean is, when the enemy comes, the general will stop it, and when the water comes, the earth will cover it. You are so outstanding, and Meredith is not blind. I believe that your talent will conquer her. Zuo King said. Thank you for your good wishes. I hope so. Xia Xingchen shrugged his shoulders. By the way, that child named Kalisa, is she an S-class mecha master? What kind of equipment is equipped on her mecha, and why is it so powerful? Zuo King was slightly stunned and silent for a while before slowly saying, everything about Kalisa is the top secret of Lingju Star and the top secret of the Galactic Empire. I happen to be in charge of mecha design and maintenance, so I know some inside information. These words, I shouldn't have told you. But, as I said just now, with our relationship, there is nothing I can't tell you. That child is the top secret of the Galactic Empire. Xia Xingchen was surprised. Not really, although she is very strong and is already an S-class mecha master at such a young age. However, I think her superpowers are nothing more than electrical. Although electrical superpowers are relatively rare, they are only B-class superpowers. In fact, I also know an electrical superpower user. Xia Xingchen was talking about Nina. The Thundergod Wings mecha he built for Nina brought Nina's electrical abilities to their fullest, making it extremely lethal. The lightning net was spread out, and once had an amazing record of destroying 80 mechas in one strike. Zuo King shook her head. Obviously Xia Xingchen had guessed wrong. Xia Xingchen was stunned and silent for a long time, with surprise in his tone. I can't be wrong. She is definitely an electrical ability user. Could it be that she is a dual ability user? If so, then it is indeed qualified to be the top secret of the Galactic Empire. No, not a dual ability user, but a full ability user. Zuo King lowered his voice and said, full ability user? Xia Xingchen's eyes widened as wide as possible, his face full of disbelief. What do you mean? Could it be that the girl has mastered all human abilities? This is impossible. The study of human mental power is a profound subject. After thousands of years of exploration and development, the abilities generated by mental power reaching a certain level are divided into two categories: superperception and mental interference. Superperception refers to receiving information beyond the human sensory organs. For example, the ability to predict, read minds, hear closely, see from afar, etc. Another type is mental interference. It is to interfere with matter through mental power. For example, Xia Xingchen's mental power, Nina's electrical power, and Popovich's magnetic power all belong to the category of mental interference. Although superpowers are divided into two categories, there are thousands of superpowers classified below. Since Krisha is known as an omnipotent person, does she have thousands of superpowers? Xia Xingchen thinks this is impossible. Even a celestial being can't do it. Zuo King laughed. Don't be ridiculous. How can someone master all the superpowers? How should I put it? Kirisa's superpower can actually be seen as an element. The element here does not refer to the basis of matter, but refers to a concept in alchemy: earth, water, fire and wind. In short, she can interfere with elemental energy such as electricity, water, and fire. In fact, the research on Kirisa's superpowers has not been completed, and her potential is still great. She is also the only Super S-level superpower user in the entire Galactic Empire. Xia Xingchen took a breath of cold air, and his heart was full of shock. Although Kirisa was not the all-powerful person he imagined. However, if she could control elemental energy, this ability was already powerful beyond imagination. No wonder Kirissa was the top secret of the Galactic Empire. She was indeed qualified. Too powerful. A Super S-level superpower user. The Galactic Empire actually hides such a trump card. Xia Xingchen exclaimed. It's true that she's powerful, but Kirissa is actually very pitiful. Zuo King's eyes were filled with a haze, and she whispered, Kirissa is not a natural person. She has no parents, and grew up in a laboratory. She is an experimental subject. Test tube baby? Clones. Xia Xingchen was slightly startled. Cloning technology was already mature in the Earth era, but due to the shackles of human morality, cloning has always been a taboo in the scientific community, and no scientist has touched this bottom line so far. Zuo King shook her head, bit her lips with her pearly teeth, and whispered, God is fair. While giving Kirissa powerful abilities, he also took away her IQ. In fact, Kirissa's IQ is only 7 years old. She will always be a child who never grows up. Shock swept Xia Xingchen's heart again. No wonder Kirissa looks like a girl of 16 or 17, but her behavior is full of childishness. Xia Xingchen could not comment on Kirissa's experience, but only felt pity. In short, there are 2 people on the coffin star who you must not mess with. One is Director Meredith. Her nickname is Ice Witch. Don't be deceived by her beautiful appearance. She is much colder and crueler than you think. The other is Little Devil Star Kirissa. Her talent is too strong. Plus she has the IQ of a 7-year-old child. Oh, it's a nightmare. Zuo King frowned and rubbed his temples with both hands. Haha, there is a saying in my hometown that even 7-year-olds are hated by dogs. Xia Xingchen said with a smile. Chapter 732 Caesar's Conspiracy. In the southern Great Cross starfield, inside the coffin star, a silver-haired girl squatted beside the artificial lake, grabbed a handful of flowers around her, crushed them viciously, and threw them into the water, muttering, Meredith, we clearly agreed to go out and play on the weekend, but you broke your promise. Kirissa hates you. Kirissa was upset about Meredith's failure to meet her, and ran to the lake alone to sulk. When passers-by saw this silver-haired little girl, they all hid away in fear, and no one dared to offend Kirissa. Kirissa, who only had the IQ of a 7-year-old child, was as naughty as those naughty children of this age, and at the same time, she had amazing destructive power that naughty children did not have. Last month, Kirissa once burned a poor guy on the fire. Meredith's punishment for her was just a week of house arrest. On the coffin star, Kirissa was truly lawless. However, after seeing Kirissa, a blonde youth showed a sinister smile on his freckled face, and walked slowly towards the famous little devil. Who are you? What do you want? Meredith doesn't allow Kirissa to talk to civilians. The blonde youth had just walked 10 meters away from Kirissa when the silver-haired girl suddenly turned around, with light blue arcs dancing on her fingers, crackling and full of deterrence. The blonde youth did not panic, with an aristocratic smile on his face, and bowed slightly. My name is Caesar Cyrus. Miss Kirissa, I'm not a lowly and dirty civilian. A few days ago, I just passed the examination of the institute, and became a junior researcher. Professor Grant is my mentor. Gran? Is it the sinister miser Grant? He is the person Kirissa hates the most. Kirissa has always been outspoken. Professor Grant's position in the institute is only second to Meredith, and he is a powerful person. There are even rumors that after Meredith retires, the position of director of the institute will definitely go to Professor Grant. Of course, Meredith is not yet 30 years old this year, and she still has at least 30 years before retirement. Professor Grant is almost 60 years old. When Caesar heard that his mentor was insulted, he was not angry at all. Instead, he said with a smile, it's that stingy gentleman. I hate him too. Kirissa and Caesar found a common topic, and the hostility subsided a lot. The arc on her hand disappeared, but there was still vigilance on her face. Kirissa is unhappy. Please go away. Kirissa wants to be alone. Caesar smiled slightly, and had no intention of leaving. He said politely, Miss Kirissa, everyone has unhappy times. Being alone is a good way, but finding someone to talk to is a better way. Do you want to try it? Talk. No one will listen to Kirissa. They all hate Kirissa. The silver-haired girl wrinkled her nose slightly, as if she was about to cry. Miss Kirissa, maybe I can listen to your voice. If you have any unhappy things, just tell me, maybe I can help you. Caesar's eyes flashed with cunning. You are willing to be Kirissa's listener. Great. Kirissa was immediately happy. She jumped up, walked over, held Caesar's hand, pulled him to the river, and began to tell him how Meredith was too much. Meredith is such a big fool. Kirissa's IQ is only 7 years old. Her logic is very poor, and she speaks incoherently. She talks about one thing for a long time, and in between, she also mixes in many trivial things in life. Caesar was patient, and pretended to listen carefully. After listening to Kirissa's crying, Caesar felt that fortunately he already knew what happened. Otherwise, with his proud IQ, he couldn't understand what Kirissa was saying. In fact, Caesar had just received Qin Yun's instructions to get rid of Xia Xingchen within half a year. Caesar likes Princess Qinjana and has always regarded Xia Xingchen as his rival. His hatred for Xia Xingchen is no less than Qin Yun's. After knowing that Xia Xingchen has arrived at Lingjiu Star, Caesar is also very angry and immediately finds out Xia Xingchen's whereabouts. After arriving at Lingjiu Star, Caesar has always regarded himself as a wise man, and of course he can't have a direct conflict with Xia Xingchen, a mere warrior. He is full of bad water and immediately thought of a conspiracy that is extremely bad, to use Clissa's hand to get rid of Xia Xingchen. This is the real purpose of Caesar's contact with Clissa. Miss Clissa, I understand that you are distressed because Meredith missed the appointment. But, what is the reason for Meredith to miss the appointment? Caesar induced the silver-haired girl with an IQ of only 7 years old. Because she has to prepare for the exam for a fool named Xia Xingchen. Clissa blinked her big eyes, and the bottom of her red pupils was full of innocence. If the exam is cancelled, can Meredith be on time for the appointment? Caesar continued to guide. Why was the exam cancelled? Kirissa felt very difficult to deal with. With her limited IQ, she couldn't think of any solution. Haha, it's very simple. For example, Xia Xingchen suddenly died. Wouldn't the exam be cancelled? Caesar's eyes were extremely vicious, instigating the innocent Kirissa. You mean, Kirissa kill him? Kirissa shook her head repeatedly. Meredith said that Kirissa can't hurt humans casually. Miss Kirissa, if you kill Xia Xingchen, you only need to burn his body with fire, and Meredith won't find it, right? Caesar sneered. Yes. Why didn't I think of it? Kirissa patted her forehead, her face full of joy, turned to Caesar and said, thank you, I will kill Xia Xingchen now. This way, Meredith will have time to play with me on the weekend. After that, Kirissa's feet flashed with blue electric light, and she ran away to find trouble with Xia Xingchen. Looking at Kirissa's back, Caesar shook his golden hair and sneered. Is this the top secret of the Empire? A Super S-class superpower who has mastered elemental abilities? An S-class mecha master who has been trained with a lot of money? My god, is her IQ really that of a 7-year-old? I think she is only 3 years old. In the battlefield of intrigue and deception, such a defective product is not as good as a D-class mecha master with normal IQ. But, her destructive power is beyond doubt. Xia Xingchen, if you are killed by an idiot like Kirissa, you will be the biggest laughingstock in the galaxy. At this moment, Xia Xingchen was standing at the counter of the cafe to pay the bill. Although he had expected that the prices on Lingjiu Star were very high, Xia Xingchen was a little surprised when he saw the long string of zeros on the bill. He roughly estimated that the prices on Lingjiu Star were 1,000 times that of other planets. Haha, I'm sorry for your expense. Because the existence of Lingjiu Star is a secret of the Empire, there is only one supply ship coming every month. The prices of these daily necessities are ridiculously high. I can't afford it. Zuoking cried. Poor. Not bad. Xia Xingchen made a lot of money on the trip to the north, and with the income from the Mecha Club, it's no exaggeration to say that Xia Xingchen is richer than a real marquis. He didn't care about the money at all. He bowed slightly and said with a smile, it's my honor to have afternoon tea with a beautiful lady like you. Wow, Xia Xingchen, when did you become so slick and win the hearts of girls? Zuoking was amazed. In her mind, Xia Xingchen was still a rustic country bumpkin from Manastar. The two had just walked out of the cafe when a light blue electric light flashed, and Kirissa suddenly appeared across the street. Xia Xingchen, Kirissa is going to kill you. Kirissa searched for 3 blocks before finding Xia Xingchen. Without saying a word, She rubbed her fingers and the light blue arc jumped happily. Lightning chain. Kirissa shouted, and a blue lightning chain like a dragon rushed towards Xia Xingchen. Chapter 733, Fierce Battle by the Lake. Facing the strong lightning current, Xia Xingchen was horrified, and every hair on his body stood up. Be careful. Xia Xingchen was not panicked, but his mind was clear. This was the fighting instinct he had honed after experiencing life and death on the battlefield, and it was fully exerted at this time. He jumped up and threw Zuoking to the ground. Swish. The lightning chain flew almost close to Xia Xingchen's scalp and hit the street lamp post behind him. Swish. The part of the steel lamp post that was hit instantly melted into iron liquid. Xia Xingchen's hair was numb. He couldn't imagine what terrible consequences would be if the lightning chain hit him or Zuoking just now. It was the first time that Kirissa missed. Her big eyes were full of astonishment, but she obviously had no intention of letting Xia Xingchen go. She stared at him fiercely, clapped her hands suddenly, and a golden arc of electricity appeared between her index fingers. Thunderblade. A high voltage electric current like a blade swept out instantly, with a blade that was 3 meters wide, slashing diagonally towards Xia Xingchen's position. Xia Xingchen threw Zuoking aside with force and rolled on the ground, dodging in a panic. The golden arc of electricity cut into the floor-to-ceiling glass of the coffee shop, and a crack immediately appeared on the huge thick glass. Unable to withstand the pressure, it shattered with a clang. The people in the coffee shop were all shocked, looking at the angry Kirissa on the street, and they hid under the table in fear. This is the power of a Super S-level superpower. Xia Xingchen did not have much time to be shocked. Although he did not know why Kirissa wanted to kill him, the most urgent task now was to lead Kirissa to a place with fewer people, to avoid hurting innocent people. With this thought, Xia Xingchen jumped up and turned to run towards the artificial lake not far away. Coward. You actually ran away. Do you think you can escape? After releasing 2 powerful moves in a row, Kirissa's face turned pale. Seeing Xia Xingchen actually turned around and ran away, her eyes were full of contempt. With a flash of lightning under her feet, the whole person turned into a silver-white stream of light and chased Xia Xingchen at an incredible speed. What is going on? Why did Kirissa attack Xia Xingchen? Looking at the backs of the two chasing each other, Zuoking reacted from the shock, and at the same time her eyes were full of deep worry. Kirissa is a Super S-level superpower user. Xia Xingchen can't be her opponent at all. He will definitely be killed by Kirissa. What should I do? Kirissa has a special status in the Coffin Star. Not only is her superpower powerful, but she is also protected by Meredith. She is a little devil star that no one dares to provoke. The only way Zuoking can think of now is to notify the security team of the Coffin Star. However, Zuoking knew very well that even the police force of Lingju Star would not be able to stop Kirissa. Zuoking was anxious. While using the communicator to contact the police force, she chased in the direction where Xia Xingchen and Kirissa left. Lakeside, tree-lined path. Xia Xingchen's figure was like a tornado, rushing past quickly. Behind Xia Xingchen, Kirissa was chasing like a flash of lightning, her silver white hair flying and shining. Kirissa rubbed her fingers, and arcs of electricity shot towards Xia Xingchen, but he seemed to have eyes on his back, and his body turned and moved, dodging them perfectly. Damn it. How can he run so fast? It's just like a monkey. Kirissa frowned and thought to herself. In fact, she had never stepped out of Lingju Star, let alone seen what a monkey looked like. So that's how it is. Xia Xingchen dodged a lightning bolt with a turn in the air, and when he saw the blue electric sparks flashing under Kirissa's feet, he suddenly realized something. Maybe there is a chance to win. A bold idea suddenly popped up in Xia Xingchen's mind. Xia Xingchen was not dodging in vain. During the escape, he had been watching Kirissa's every move and deduced Kirissa's weaknesses from them. No one is perfect, and Super S-level superpowers cannot be without weaknesses. There are several strange places on Kirissa's body, which Xia Xingchen keenly captured. According to Zuoking, Kirissa is an all-powerful person. In addition to being able to manipulate and interfere with electricity, she also has the ability to interfere with the energy of elements such as fire and water. But why does Kirissa prefer electricity so much? From the beginning, Kirissa has been using electric attacks. Of course, this may also be the little girl's willfulness. However, there is a more reasonable possibility. Xia Xingchen smiled, rushed out of the path, stood on the grass by the lake, and looked at Carissa. Carissa was slightly startled, but did not chase after him immediately. Instead, she sneered, "Coward, why don't you run away?" Xia Xingchen smiled faintly and said, "Because there is no need to run away. You are not my opponent." What did you say? I'm not your opponent? Carissa was stunned, and then said angrily, "Yes, you are not my opponent." Xia Xingchen said seriously, "First, you don't know martial arts. You can't predict my body shape and footwork at all, so it's impossible to hit me. Of course, with your powerful ability, ordinary warriors can't use their body skills at all, and will be killed." Carissa couldn't figure out whether Xia Xingchen was praising herself or insulting herself, but it sounded like a compliment, and said triumphantly, "Of course, you will be killed as well." Xia Xingchen shook his head. "Second, and the most important point. Although your ability is powerful, it also consumes a lot of mental power. You have just shot dozens of lightning arrows at me. Logically, your mental power should be exhausted. However, you have no signs of mental exhaustion. Therefore, you have been secretly borrowing external forces. Cables have been laid underground here, and the light blue sparks that have been flashing under your feet are proof that you are borrowing cables. And there are no cables under my feet now. Come on, let's have a fair fight. I also want to see how powerful a Super S level psychic is." Clearly, what she said hit the mark. Her face flushed red as she argued, "I can easily kill you without any other power." Clearly, her eyebrows wrinkled slightly. The lake water behind Xia Xingchen suddenly gushed out, turning into a sharp blade in the air and piercing into his back. Seeing that Xia Xingchen seemed to be undecided and still looking in her direction, clearly, a smug smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Chapter 734 The Power of Take-Eye. Behind Xia Xingchen, a column of water in the lake rose to the height of 2 people and turned into a sharp blade in the air, stabbing fiercely at his back. Pop. When the sharp blade was only half an inch away from Xia Xingchen's back, it suddenly stopped in midair, as if it had hit an invisible wall. Telekinetic wall. Xia Xingchen had a faint smile on his face and looked at Carissa. "A sneak attack will not work on me." Xia Xingchen raised his right hand slightly, and the powerful telekinesis crushed the water blade, turning it into a pool of water that fell on the ground, splashing water droplets. You are also a superpower. However, your superpower is D-level mental telekinesis. And I am a Super S-level superpower. Carissa was slightly startled, and then a look of realization appeared on her face. She straightened her chest, and her little face was full of pride. "It's a pity that you will lose to my D-level superpower." Xia Xingchen smiled easily. He had already won. Water and fire tornado. Carissa clenched her fists. One hand condensed with light blue water vapor, and the other hand was a blazing flame. She pushed her hands forward suddenly, and 2 completely different energies entangled together, like a roaring dragon rushing towards Xia Xingchen. What a terrible move. Unfortunately, it has no effect on me at all. Xia Xingchen chuckled, and slightly hooked his fingers. The powerful mental power erected a barrier in front of him to block the water and fire tornado. The telekinetic wall again. "Do you know other moves?" Carissa was angry. "Of course." Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. His prediction was not wrong. Although Carissa's superpowers were powerful, her mental power was in a state of scarcity. Carissa was still young, and being able to become an S-level mecha master meant that her mental power had reached level 50. Level 50 mental power is a very scary concept. Xia Xingchen's total mental power is very abundant because of the crystal pyramid. However, the total mental power of an S-level mecha master with a mental power of level 50 is about 3 times that of Xia Xingchen now. Of course, when Xia Xingchen's mental power reaches level 50, his total mental power will far exceed the normal number. However, he is only level 32 now. Carissa is a true S-class mecha master. When she faces Xia Xingchen, she doesn't need any moves at all. She can imprison his body with her powerful mental power and then kill him in one fell swoop. However, Carissa just drove the mecha and defeated the Claw in space, winning a great victory with 1 against 50. Although it seems that Carissa won easily, the silver mecha must be equipped with some special system which consumes a lot of mental power. Therefore, Kirissa is not in her prime now, and the mental power left in her mind is about the same as Xia Xingchen. Come on. Let me show you my other moves. Xia Xingchen stood on his right foot, and the toe of his left foot drew a circle on the soil in front of his body, with his toes pointing empty, and his hands in a posture. This is the starting posture of Tekai. Martial arts? Kirissa sneered. Martial arts are useless, and should have been thrown into the trash can long ago. Watch me kill you. Kirissa's deep red eyes flashed with light, her long silver hair stood up, and her whole body floated in the air, half a meter above the ground. Kirissa's body was surrounded by lightning, fire, and water vapor. A strong energy was brewing under her skin, and it seemed that it could break out of her body at any time. There were no moves, only strong power. Kirissa mobilized all the energy she could mobilize, and released it all. A huge beam of light flashing with colorful light, like a laser cannon, blasted towards Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen still had a faint smile on his face, and his hands were slightly emitting light. He also concentrated all his mental power in his hands. Boom. Xia Xingchen actually took Kirissa's strongest attack with his bare hands. The beam of light slammed into Xia Xingchen's hand fiercely. Even though he had a mental wall condensed on his hand, the high temperature still made his skin sizzle. Xia Xingchen was not panicked at all. He drew a circle with his hands, like a rolling ball, and led the direction of the light column to circle behind him. He actually turned the direction of the light column. 4 ounces to move 1,000 pounds. Xia Xingchen used the move of 4 ounces to move 1,000 pounds in Tekai. The reason why 4 ounces can move 1,000 pounds is that the warrior already has the strength of 1,000 pounds. Xia Xingchen's mental strength is not weaker than that of Kirissa. What's more, this move of Tekai contains the essence of Eastern martial arts. What? Facing the light column that changed direction, Kirissa's little face turned pale. Ah. Kirissa was hit by the light column she had sent out and screamed. Xia Xingchen stopped his hands in time, raised his hands, and changed the direction of the light column again, letting the remaining energy vent to the sky. Even so, Kirissa's clothes were already tattered, her body was covered with scars, and she had fainted. Xia Xingchen's eyes went dark. Fighting with a super S-class psychic like Kirissa was not an easy task. He had exhausted all his strength, and sat on the ground for a while, unable to stand up. Xingchen. Zuoking ran over in a panic. Seeing Kirissa fainted on the ground in tattered clothes, she was surprised and said, You defeated Kirissa? Xia Xingchen smiled slightly. It's just beating a little girl. What's there to brag about? She is a super S-class psychic, a mecha master with a mental power of more than level 50. Zuoking opened her mouth and looked at Xia Xingchen in disbelief. In my eyes, she is just an ignorant little girl. Xia Xingchen had a fight with Kirissa for no reason. Although defeating a super S-class psychic was a happy thing, as a soldier, Xia Xingchen rejected this meaningless battle from the bottom of his heart. Anyway, you should leave here quickly. The security team will be here soon. If they know that you beat up Kirissa like this, Meredith will be angry. Meredith is very protective of her. If she knows that you hurt Kirissa, your chances of joining the institute will be ruined. Zuoking walked to Xia Xingchen and helped him up, looking anxious. That's a bit difficult. Xia Xingchen frowned. You go first, and I'll take care of the security team. Zuoking urged Xia Xingchen again, asking him to leave. Xia Xingchen regained some strength, nodded to Zuoking, and left here before the security team arrived. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 735 Examination. Behind a big tree, C's looked at Xia Xingchen's back with a shocked face. I didn't expect Xia Xingchen to be so strong that even Kirissa couldn't defeat him. You are indeed qualified to be my enemy. But, never mind, I didn't expect Kirissa to do anything to him. Anyway, she is a moron who can be dealt with by a lollipop. The most urgent task now is to prevent him from passing the examination of the institute. If Xia Xingchen is allowed to enter the institute, it will be troublesome for me to do anything to him at that time. Caesar thought about it, and decided to go to his mentor, Professor Jelan. He has a certain say in the institute and should be able to give Xia Xingchen a low score so that he cannot pass the exam. Xia Xingchen had just returned to the institute when someone notified him to take the entrance test. The first item of the entrance test is a written test. Xia Xingchen was taken to a huge lecture hall where he was the only one. When the test papers were handed out, Xia Xingchen glanced at them and found that they were all basic theoretical knowledge learned in military school, covering many subjects such as physics, biology, and chemistry. For ordinary people, the exam might be a bit difficult because the content is too complicated. But for Xia Xingchen, who has a photographic memory, it is a piece of cake. Xia Xingchen quickly finished the test paper and handed it in. A few minutes later, the examiner in charge of marking the papers handed Meredith the transcript of Xia Xingchen's perfect score in the written test. Meredith adjusted his black framed glasses and looked unmoved. Not bad. He actually got a perfect score. It seems that he is not an ordinary nobleman. Very good results, especially the knowledge of mecha. His memory must be very good. The examiner praised. Humph, in our era, human memory is the most useless thing. Meredith sneered. No matter how strong the memory is, it is not as good as a computer. A real scientist does not need a rigid memory at all. Director, what do you mean? The examiner asked. Since he passed the written test, he will be assigned a second test to test his mental strength. Meredith thought for a while and said. Xia Xingchen was taken to a room, stripped naked as instructed, and sat on a cold metal chair. This chair looked no different from an electric chair. After Xia Xingchen sat on it, he immediately found that his hands and feet were locked, and a strange looking metal cap was lowered and buckled on his head. Before entering the room, Xia Xingchen was told that he was going to test his mental power. But seeing this formation, Xia Xingchen realized that the mental power test of Ling Juxing was extraordinary. After all, Xia Xingchen only needed a few simple steps to test his mental power before. However, the researchers here made the mental power test like a large-scale experiment. Xia Xingchen didn't know that at this moment. Meredith was watching him coldly from behind the screen. After the chair was powered on, Xia Xingchen felt a needle-like pain all over his body. With his strong willpower, he restrained himself from crying out in pain. Then, Xia Xingchen suddenly felt as if a needle had been pierced into his brain, and the shocking pain from the depths of his soul swept through his body. Even a battle-hardened soldier like Xia Xingchen couldn't help but twitch at this moment. However, his body was firmly bound, and it was impossible for him to move. Mental power level 32. Awaken superpowers. Mental telekinesis. 0 chance of awakening superpowers again. Evaluation. Genius. A cold mechanical voice came from the machine. On the other side of the screen, Meredith's mouth moved slightly. Genius. Not bad. But, in our era, what we lack the least is genius. However, mental telekinesis, a D-level superpower, is still very good. Xia Xingchen not only conducted a mental power test, but also a detailed report on physical skills. Xia Xingchen's body is much stronger than that of ordinary people. But Meredith didn't even look at this physical skill report and threw it into the trash can. For a scientific researcher like Meredith, she believes that the body is just a carrier of the brain. No matter how strong the body is, because of the limitations of human talent, it is not even stronger than a tiger or a lion. No matter how you train the body, weaknesses will not become strengths. Director, should we let him pass the exam? His grades are pretty good among his peers. Especially his mental power level has reached level 32. And it can be seen that he has not taken too many mental drugs, and his body does not have too high drug resistance. An examiner asked in a low voice. Well, call Professor Jelan over. Xia Xingchen's ability is mental telekinesis, and he can learn to make mental sensing devices from him. If Professor Jelan needs it, Xia Xingchen will stay. If the professor doesn't want to, please ask Xia Xingchen to leave Lingji Star. Meredith adjusted his glasses and made a decision quickly. Xia Xingchen's abilities are relatively good among his peers. He has no obvious shortcomings and no specific strengths, except that his mental power index is higher than that of ordinary people. However, if you want to stay in Lingji Star, excellence alone is far from enough. Of course, Meredith let Professor Jelan decide whether Xia Xingchen should stay or go, which actually tacitly agreed that Xia Xingchen would join the institute. After all, Professor Grant's selection requirements were not as strict as Meredith's, and he was in need of people now. After a while, Professor Grant pushed the door open, and Caesar followed behind him with a harmless and shy smile on his face. Professor Grant was not young, he was nearly 60 years old, his hair and beard were already grey, and his body was slightly fat. Although Professor Grant's appearance was majestic, everyone in the entire Lingju Star knew that he loved money like his life, and was a famous miser. He was also stingy with his own knowledge. None of the students who followed Professor Grant could learn real skills. To put it bluntly, they were all his workers. When Meredith saw Professor Grant, she couldn't help frowning. She didn't say much, and handed Xia Xingchen's information to Professor Grant. Caesar had already talked to Professor Grant, and was determined to drive Xia Xingchen away. Therefore, Professor Grant glanced casually at the information, and threw it on the table with disdain. "You stuff such garbage into my hands? Do you really think I'm a garbage collection station?" Meredith's eyebrows were tightly twisted together. She was very dissatisfied with Professor Grant's attitude in her heart, but she would not fall out with this annoying guy because of this matter. She just said lightly, "Since Professor Grant doesn't like you, let this Xia Xingchen leave." Meredith waved her hand and prepared to send someone to inform Xia Xingchen that he had not passed the entrance examination and must leave Lingjiu Star within 36 hours. Chapter 736, The Killer. However, at this time, Meredith received several reports that had just been delivered. She opened the first report and her face was immediately filled with shock. The first report was the last item of Xia Xingchen's mental power test results. Mental power strength. Generally speaking, mental power strength is linked to the mental power level. Xia Xingchen's mental power level is 32, so the mental power strength is at most 3000 Fu. However, the report showed that Xia Xingchen's mental power strength reached an astonishing 10,000 Fu, which is equivalent to a mental power level of more than 40. Meredith immediately suspected that the detection machine was broken. According to the data accumulated by Lingju Star over the years, such a strange phenomenon has never occurred. The staff in charge of the machine patted his chest and promised, "Director, I guarantee that the testing equipment is normal." In fact, I also felt incredible after seeing this data, so after testing the equipment, I did 3 more tests. So, this report came out so late. Xia Xingchen's mental strength is really 10,000 Fu. 32nd level of mental strength, but 10,000 Fu of mental strength. Xia Xingchen seems to be a person with something strange. Under the black framed glasses, Meredith's golden eyes suddenly sparkled. Meredith has a huge interest in the unknown and abnormal beyond ordinary people. But, it still seems not enough. Meredith glanced at Professor Grant, and regretted it in her heart. If she had known that Xia Xingchen's mental strength was so high, she would have decided to let Xia Xingchen stay, and then arrange a tutor for him. However, she has now handed over the decision of Xia Xingchen's stay to Professor Grant, so, unless Meredith is determined to fall out with Professor Grant, otherwise, she will eventually listen to Professor Grant's opinion. At this time, Meredith opened the second report. She only took a glance and couldn't help but cover her lips to prevent herself from screaming out of surprise. This report is the preliminary analysis result of God's Gold. When Xia Xingchen gave God's Gold to Meredith and asked her to help analyze it, Meredith didn't really care. She just handed it to her assistant and asked him to test it and write a report. After seeing the data in the report, Meredith realized how big a mistake she had made. Not to mention the high strength and lightness of God's Gold. Just the property that God's Gold can perfectly refract laser light will change the pattern of the Milky Way. It turns out that what he said is true. Meredith's mind was like a sea of water, and she quickly made several deductions. The conclusion she came to was the same as Zhuo Lehang's. God's Gold will completely change the political pattern of the Milky Way and set off a new wave of mecha technology innovation. Analyzing God's Gold is urgent. God's Gold must be analyzed immediately, the synthesis formula must be found, and then a way to mass produce it, and equip it on mechas and warships. Otherwise, the Galactic Empire will surely lose. Once the empire collapses, the Qin royal family will also lose its former glory. By then, Lingjiu Star will also be finished. Meredith has realized that it is no longer a question of whether Xia Xingchen stays on Lingjiu Star. Instead, he must stay on Lingjiu Star. After all, the God's Gold was brought by Xia Xingchen. If he is driven away, Lingjiu Star will also lose the opportunity to analyze the God's Gold. Even if Xia Xingchen is a complete waste, he must stay, just because he has the God's Gold. What's more, Xia Xingchen's mental strength is extremely high. Professor Grant, I changed my mind. Meredith turned his head and said in a tough attitude, I decided to let Xia Xingchen stay on Lingjiu Star. Ah. Cough, cough. Professor Grant was sitting on the sofa, crossing his legs and drinking coffee. When he heard Meredith's words, he choked on the water and started coughing violently. Why? Professor Grant took the towel handed over by Caesar, wiped the water stains on his mouth and chin, and looked at Meredith with a pair of small eyes. He is obviously a waste. Why do you want to keep him? Because I like him. Meredith's attitude was very tough. Before the God's Gold was completely analyzed, she had no intention of making the existence of God's Gold public. Professor Grant was furious. What he disliked most was Meredith's arrogance. Obviously Meredith was young, inexperienced, and had a bad temper. Just because of Carissa, Meredith actually became the director of the institute, relying on her power and being very disrespectful to them, the old professors. What's wrong with me? I have decided. Meredith's mind no longer had room to think about other things. Her brain turned quickly, constantly deducing how God's Gold would change mankind. Okay, you are really good. Faced with Meredith's strength, Professor Grant was helpless and turned around angrily to leave. Caesar was dumbfounded. It is said that women are fickle. Meredith is too fickle. She just said that she wanted to drive Xia Xingchen away from Lingjiu Star. How come her attitude changed completely after reading a page of the report? Caesar despised Professor Glenn even more. He thought that Professor Glenn could say a few words in front of Meredith. But he didn't expect that when she was tough, he immediately wilted. It was really useless. Oh, it seems I still have to rely on myself. Caesar sighed in his heart, took a step forward, and stood in front of Meredith. Director, although I, a junior researcher, am not qualified to say anything in front of you. However, as Xia Xingchen's classmate, I still know him a little. He has a big problem with his character, cruel and violent. Such a person should never be left behind. Oh, you are Xia Xingchen's classmate? Meredith had no impression of Caesar at all and waved his hand impatiently. This is a scientific research institute, and character is meaningless. Many famous scientists in history are scumbags in reality. But what does it matter? The science and technology they have developed have truly benefited mankind. But Xia Xingchen just injured Carissa. Caesar threw out the trump card. Everyone on the coffin star knew that Meredith doted on Carissa very much. No matter how big a mistake she made, Meredith would forgive her and protect her. Carissa was Meredith's weak spot. Xia Xingchen actually dared to touch this reverse scale. It would be the best outcome for him to leave Lingjiu Star alive. Not to mention joining the research institute. Forget it. Chapter 737 Martial Arts Teacher. As soon as Caesar said this, everyone present was stunned, with surprise on their faces. Carissa was beaten? How is that possible? Caesar, don't talk nonsense. Professor Grant shouted. Teacher, it is an indisputable fact that Carissa was sent to the hospital by the security team. As for whether she was beaten by Xia Xingchen, just ask her, and you will know. Caesar smiled faintly. Carissa. Meredith lost her usual calmness and looked worried, like a mother worried about her child. She immediately contacted the hospital and learned that Carissa was fine, just a few minor injuries, and had already woken up. Meredith breathed a sigh of relief and put down her heart. Meredith immediately had a video conversation with Carissa. Carissa was lying on the hospital bed with a beautiful doll beside her pillow. When she saw Meredith's face appear on the screen, she burst into tears. Meredith, idiot, you idiot. Carissa is in so much pain. Meredith's eyes flashed with heartache, but her face was still cold. Carissa, why did you do this? Carissa. Kirisa went to kill Xia Xingchen, but was injured by him. Kirisa is also an idiot, and she can't even beat Xia Xingchen. Kirisa's eyes were red and swollen from crying. You want to kill Xia Xingchen? Who told you to do this? Meredith said angrily. Humph, it's because Meredith is busy with Xia Xingchen's exam. If Kirisa kills him, Meredith can accompany me on the weekend. Kirisa pursed her lips and snorted coldly. Stupid. Meredith couldn't help but almost blurt out the word idiot. However, she still held back. It is an indisputable fact that Kirisa's IQ is not high, only equivalent to that of a 7-year-old child. No matter how others scolded her, saying that she was a moron or mentally retarded. However, Meredith never scolded her for being stupid, but always praised her for being smart and capable. For Meredith, Kirisa was her daughter, a little girl who would never grow up. Kirisa, I'm sorry, I will accompany you this weekend. Meredith felt distressed. In fact, she didn't have to be busy with Xia Xingchen's exams on the weekend. This was just an excuse, but Kirisa actually took it seriously and wanted to kill Xia Xingchen. This was something Meredith didn't expect. Meredith apologized not only to Kirisa, but also to Xia Xingchen. Meredith suddenly felt that she owed Xia Xingchen something. Kirisa, how did you lose to Xia Xingchen? Your mental power level is level 50, and his is only level 32. Did he use a weapon or sneak attack you? Meredith asked. Kirisa doesn't know. He is very powerful. He is more powerful than any idiot Kirisa has ever seen before. Kirisa burst into tears and laughed when she saw Meredith apologize to her. Meredith thought about it and couldn't get anything out of Kirisa, so he immediately asked his men to pull up the surveillance video of the area. Every inch of the scientific area on the Coffin Star is monitored, but there are fewer surveillance cameras in the civilian area, and there are many blind spots. When everyone saw the battle between Kirisa and Xia Xingchen on the surveillance, their faces were full of astonishment. There is no doubt that Kirisa is very strong. However, Xia Xingchen was able to easily defeat Kirisa, and even used martial arts moves to defeat Kirisa in the end. This was beyond everyone's expectations. Why? Meredith muttered to himself, and fell into a state of absent-mindedness. What's so strange about this? Xia Xingchen is a soldier, and is good at fighting. Kirisa is just a little girl. Even if she is talented, she can't compare with a soldier who kills people like crazy. Then again, martial arts, such old-fashioned skills, are useless on the battlefield. No matter how strong a martial artist is, he can't be blown up by a single shot when he is on a mecha. Caesar curled his lips. Seeing that everyone was shocked by Xia Xingchen's strength, he felt sour in his heart and his words were full of jealousy. No. Meredith shook her head, her messy blonde hair scattered, and her eyes had seen the scene of the future mecha war. Due to the emergence of God's Gold, the situation of war will change rapidly in the future. In the past, the armor of Mechas could not resist the attack of laser guns, but now it can. So before the invention of alternative long-range weapons, the battles between Mechas will be mainly close-range hand-to-hand combat. Close-range Mechas will become the mainstream. Then martial arts, such a dragon-slaying skill, will also shine again. Hey, what's right or wrong? This man named Xia Xingchen has bad behavior. He injured Miss Kirisa as soon as he arrived at the Coffin Star. It's better to drive this kind of person away as soon as possible. Professor Grant made his own comments in a senior manner. No. Meredith's golden eyes sparkled. Not only can Xia Xingchen not leave, moreover, he has to be Kirisa's teacher and teach her martial arts. Suddenly, the whole audience was silent. Everyone's eyes were as bright as light bulbs. No one knew how Meredith's brain circuit was. Xia Xingchen obviously injured Kirisa, but she was not angry. Instead, she let Xia Xingchen be Kirisa's teacher. Isn't this nonsense? Professor Grant's beard trembled with anger. He was almost driven crazy by Meredith's willful behavior. You don't understand. Meredith curled her lips with contempt, and was too lazy to explain her thoughts to these mediocre people. Anyway, one day, facts will prove that she, Meredith, is right. Okay, you are the director, you have the final say. Professor Jella left in anger, and Caesar, who was also confused, followed the teacher, and left the room in dismay. Well, we have to arrange a qualified mentor for Xia Xingchen. Meredith didn't even look at Professor Jelan. In her mind, Professor Jelan was the worst in the entire institute in terms of academics and character. Meredith didn't have a good candidate for the time being. However, this matter is not that unimportant. She can go back and think about it slowly. The top priority now is to tell Xia Xingchen the news and let him settle down temporarily. In the corridor, Xia Xingchen was not in a hurry at all. He leaned on the bench and closed his eyes to rest. Zhuo King, however, was like an ant on a hot pot, pacing back and forth, anxiously turning around. Zhuo King was worried about Xia Xingchen. If he couldn't pass the entrance examination, he would have to leave Lingju Star within the specified time. As long as Xia Xingchen leaves the Coffin Star, Regent Qin Yun will act without hesitation and arrange for warships to destroy the evil thought in the southern Great Cross Star region. Whether or not to pass the entrance examination is no longer a matter of honor and face, but a matter of Xia Xingchen's life. Xia Xingchen, why aren't you anxious? Are you so confident? Zhuo King was so angry when he saw Xia Xingchen close his eyes and seemed to fall asleep and pushed his arm. Xia Xingchen opened his eyes and smiled faintly. I don't have confidence. But there is no point in being anxious, isn't it? Chapter 738 Exchange List. At this time, a staff member in a white robe came towards Xia Xingchen. Congratulations, Lord Marquis, you have successfully passed the exam of the Royal Scientific Research Institute of Lingji Star. Great. Zhuo King jumped up all of a sudden, her face full of excitement. Xia Xingchen had a faint smile on her face. He knew very well that, if he could successfully join the institute, he would probably have to go through several thrilling games. However, God's Gold still played a decisive role. Lord Marquis, the director is meeting with the Elders Council. Please go to this room and wait. The staff member said respectfully. Elders Council? Zhuo King's face flashed with astonishment, and he turned to look at Xia Xingchen in confusion. The most powerful person on Lingji Star is undoubtedly Director Meredith. If there is a problem that Meredith cannot solve personally, it is necessary to meet with the Elders Council to negotiate and solve it. The members of the Elders Council are all scientists who can stand on their own in the field of human science today. Zhuo King's grandfather Zhuo Lehen was actually a member of the Elders Council, but due to his advanced age and poor health, he chose to retire and live out his days on Furu Star. It was very rare that Xia Xingchen could actually alarm the Elders Council. In any case, Xia Xingchen successfully became a member of the institute, and Zhuo King was happy for him. When they arrived at the lounge, Zhuo King couldn't help but sigh. Xia Xingchen, you've made a fortune this time by becoming a junior researcher in the institute. This is what many people dream of. You must seize the opportunity to exchange for some of the latest developed mecha equipment blueprints to enhance your combat effectiveness. Exchange for mecha blueprints? Xia Xingchen was stunned. How to exchange? Ah, you don't know yet? Zhuo King was stunned for a moment, then smiled. Oh, I forgot to tell you. The members of the institute are divided into 5 levels: junior researchers, intermediate researchers, senior researchers, professors, and elders. For example, you and I have just joined the institute and are both junior researchers. However, we already have the authority to obtain some of the technologies developed by Lingju Star. Of course, some price must be paid. Price? Money? Xia Xingchen asked curiously. Of course not money. Money is meaningless in the institute. Because any research costs money that is unimaginable to an individual. To exchange technology here, you need a special currency called technology points. As for how to get technology points, there are many ways, such as going to an alien planet with a research ship, submitting a plant or animal sample that is not recorded in the institute, discovering a new planet suitable for human habitation, and finding an alien race that has never had contact with humans. Of course, the simplest way is to complete a research project. As for how many technology points you get, the elders will conduct a professional evaluation. Zhuo King said, while counting on her fingers. Technology points exchange technology. Shouldn't the technology developed by Lingju Star be shared for the benefit of mankind? Xia Xingchen frowned slightly. How is it possible? Zhuo King said curiously, any technology has a patent. How can it be shared for free? Any of these technologies on Lingju Star cannot be bought with money. Being able to exchange with technology points is already a great discount. Oh. Xia Xingchen raised his eyebrows. He thought carefully and realized that there was nothing wrong with Ling Star's model. Technology is not a free item. The research and development of each scientific technology requires a lot of manpower, material resources and time. Some scientists spend their entire lives researching only one scientific research result. If it is really shared for free, then others will just sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor and will not pay attention to the research results of scientists. If this continues, the final result will be that no one will do scientific research and human development will stagnate. The model of Ling Xing uses technology points to inspire future generations to research more technology so that mankind will become more and more prosperous. Xia Xingchen nodded slightly, having already approved of this model. He asked curiously, how many technology points do you have now? What technology can you exchange for? Zuo King stuck out a tongue and said, my technology points are 0. Technology points are not as easy to earn as you think. Scientific research work is a long-term process. You and I are still too young and need to endure the days slowly. A moment later, Meredith walked into the room in high heels and said to Xia Xingchen, Lord Marquis, please come here. Xia Xingchen took a deep breath, nodded slightly to Zuo King, and then followed Meredith along the corridor and quickly walked to a quiet office. Meredith sat on a chair, her slender legs and stockings crossed, raised her chin, and asked him to sit on the sofa opposite her. Xia Xingchen sat down as he was told, looking at the blonde director known as the Ice Witch with a calm look in his eyes. Meredith took a black pencil from the pen holder on the table, tied her thatched blonde hair into a bun, and then pinned it with the pencil, pushing her black framed glasses. Mr. Marquis, first of all, congratulations on passing the exam with excellent results and becoming a member of the institute. I think you should have known the rights and obligations of being a researcher. Xia Xingchen nodded slightly. I know most of them. This is the exchange authority list of the primary institute. You can take a general look at it first. Meredith flicked his fingers. Puff. Or three-dimensional virtual projection immediately appeared in the air, which was an extremely complex and huge list. There are thousands of technologies that can be exchanged on the list, which are classified according to disciplines and cover all areas of human scientific design. Xia Xingchen is most interested in two categories, mecha design and human medicine. Xia Xingchen's father, Xia Yu, had his legs bitten off by a ferocious beast in the mine of Manastar, becoming a disabled person. This has always been Xia Xingchen's heart knot. Later, Xia Xingchen found a doctor to help his father build prosthetic limbs, temporarily solving this problem. But Xia Xingchen still hopes that his father can have his own legs instead of relying on machines. It is true that mechanical prostheses have advantages that are difficult to compare with the human body. Some mercenaries even deliberately cut off part of their body to replace it with a mechanical prosthesis to gain more powerful abilities. However, mechanical prostheses also have a big disadvantage, which is rejection. The human immune system will reject foreign objects, and most patients who undergo human organ transplants die from this rejection reaction. Of course, with current human medicine, rejection reactions can be alleviated with drugs, which means that Xia Yu, who has installed prostheses, needs to take a lot of drugs. Medicines are 3-point poisons. When my father was young, his body could still bear it. As my father gets older day by day, his body is not as good as before, and taking drugs will cause serious damage to his body. In fact, people who have mechanical prostheses have a lifespan that is 10 to 20 years shorter than ordinary people. If possible, Xia Xingchen hopes that his father's legs can regenerate. Chapter 739, Developed Brain, Simple Limbs. Found it. Xia Xingchen's eyes lit up. He found the option of human limb regeneration surgery under the list of human medicine. The price was clearly marked at 20 technology points. Xia Xingchen didn't know what 20 technology points meant. It didn't seem like a lot, but he was penniless now, and didn't have any technology points. Even if he liked it, he couldn't exchange it. You want to exchange for this operation? Meredith looked at Xia Xingchen in surprise. This kind of human limb regeneration operation is a technology from 200 years ago. Now the big hospitals on Xianyu and Star can also perform this operation. Why do you want to exchange for it? A trace of longing flashed in Xia Xingchen's eyes. My father was injured, and his legs were disabled, so I want him to stand up again. Meredith shook his head. After all, this operation is an old technology, and has some side effects. For example, during the regeneration process, the patient will experience great pain. Moreover, if the rehabilitation training is not carried out properly, the regrown limbs will atrophy again. And we now have better alternative technologies that can save patients from these pains and sequelae. Xia Xingchen's eyes lit up. Really? How many technology points are required for this new type of limb regeneration operation? Meredith thought for a while and said, 100. The technology points spent are not few, because the patient must come to Lingji Star in person for this operation. So, the patient's identity requirements are also very strict. It must be your direct relative. You just said that it seems to be your father? Xia Xingchen nodded. Yes, it's my father's IU. Meredith said, of course you can. Xia Xingchen smiled bitterly, but I don't have any technology points. How long will it take to earn so many technology points? Meredith thought for a while. If it's a junior researcher, and the research process goes smoothly, it will take about 5 to 7 years. Xia Xingchen was stunned. Why would it take so long? That's still a smooth situation. Technology points are not something that can be earned casually. Meredith handed Xia Xingchen 2 documents. But you do have technology points. Xia Xingchen took the documents and looked through them. The first document was an assessment report from the Senate, which assessed the value of God's Gold and Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha. God's Gold in an unanalyzed state is worth 100 technology points, while Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha is only worth 10 points. The two things you brought are both new technologies that Lingju Star doesn't have. The Doomsday Catastrophe Mecha has average technology content, but the God's Gold has a lot of technology content. I just had a meeting with the elders to discuss the value of these two things. If you are willing, sign below to indicate your willingness to hand over these two things to Lingju Star. Then you can get 110 technology points. Enough to pay for your father's surgery. Meredith explained. I see. Xia Xingchen nodded, signed the document without any hesitation, and began to ask about the details of the surgery. 100 technology points is also a big number for a professor. Do you really want to use it on your father's surgery? This is a bit too wasteful. You can exchange it for a new mecha and related weapons and equipment. Meredith shook his head. No, I have decided. My father is the only relative in the world. He raised me to adulthood. I owe him too much. I must give him the best surgery and the best medical conditions. Xia Xingchen's eyes were firm. I respect your decision. Meredith shrugged. Xia Xingchen opened the second file and found that it was actually a letter of employment. It wanted to hire Xia Xingchen as Kirissa's martial arts teacher. The remuneration would be 50 to 1000 technology points according to Kirissa's martial arts level. The specific standard would be evaluated by the Council of Elders. Hiss. Xia Xingchen took a breath and a look of astonishment appeared on his face. God's Gold could only be exchanged for 100 technology points, but being Kirissa's martial arts teacher could earn up to 1000 technology points, which was an immeasurable amount of money. Why did you choose me? Xia Xingchen was shocked for a moment, and his face returned to normal. He put the file down and said lightly, because you may be the best martial artist on the entire Lingju Star. Meredith said bluntly, we have always looked down on martial arts. No matter how powerful martial arts are, they cannot withstand artillery fire. No matter how powerful a warrior is, he will be like a newborn baby under the crushing performance of the mecha. However, God's Gold has changed all this. I have reached a consensus with the Council of Elders that the future development path of mechas will require close combat for a long time. Therefore, the rating of martial arts has been raised from E to A. In other words, a martial arts master driving a mecha can at least be comparable to an A-level mecha master. Meredith's opinion is the same as Zhuo Lehang's. Xia Xingchen nodded and signed his name on the letter of appointment. This is a good thing that falls from the sky. It would be stupid not to agree. Okay, there are only two things for now. Go back and think about what kind of research you prefer. I will arrange a professor for you as soon as possible to conduct research on the topic. Go back and arrange your residence first. You have a single apartment in the Science City. However, your crew members will live in the civilian area, and you have to find a place to live there by yourself. Meredith nodded. As for the things you can exchange, you can check them at any time on your portable terminal. There is also some basic information about the Coffin Star, scientific expedition tasks that can earn technology points, etc. I will notify you as soon as Carissa is discharged from the hospital. Thank you, Director. Xia Xingchen stood up and said goodbye to Meredith. Zuo King was waiting at the door. When she saw Xia Xingchen coming out, she smiled and said, "What did the director tell you?" Xia Xingchen shrugged and said lightly, "He gave me 110 technology points and asked me to be Carissa's martial arts teacher." Oh my god. Zuo King was stunned and stood there blankly, with a blank mind. After a long while, Zuo King bit her lip and looked at Xia Xingchen sourly. Are you having an affair with that witch? Why is she so nice to you? Does she think you are handsome and want to support you?" Xia Xingchen was stunned for a moment. "Zuo King, what are you talking about? How could I be that kind of person?" Zuo King was upset, but 110 technology points, I may not be able to earn that many technology points in my life. Also, you obviously injured Carissa. Why did Meredith let you be her martial arts teacher? This is not scientific at all. No way. Xia Xingchen smiled lightly. According to Meredith, among the nearly 20,000 people in the entire Lingju Star, no one is stronger than me. That's true. Zuo King nodded slightly. Those weak researchers have developed brains but simple limbs. They don't even have the strength to carry a bucket of pure water. Chapter 740 Technology Monopoly. Under Zuo King's guidance, Xia Xingchen first visited his single apartment. The apartment was very small, less than 80 square meters, but it was small, but fully equipped with kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, living room, and no decent furniture. It was very simple. Zuo King explained, "This is the dormitory for junior researchers, just like a beehive, simple and efficient. If you have the opportunity to become a more senior researcher in the future, you can live in a larger room. As for professors, you can be assigned a single family villa. The class solidification in the empire is very serious. Even in a scientific temple like Lingjuxing, people are divided into different levels. Of course, according to Zuo King, only in this way can people be motivated to work hard for progress. If the living conditions are too good, they will be blinded by the luxurious life." Xia Xingchen did not comment on Zuo King's statement. In fact, he never thought that there was anything wrong with the social system of the empire. He was just a soldier, a mecha, not a sociologist. After visiting the apartment, Xia Xingchen said goodbye to Zuo King and returned to the evil mine to meet Hugo and Bielsa. Hearing that Xia Xingchen had successfully passed the examination of the institute, the crew members congratulated him happily. Deep in their eyes, they all had the emotion of surviving a disaster. Whether Xia Xingchen could officially join the institute was related to their temporary stay on the Coffin Star, and also related to their lives. Because if Xia Xingchen did not become a member of the institute, it would mean that the evil thought would have to return to space in a short time. The Imperial starship arranged by Kinyan was eyeing them in the southern Grand Cross starfield, quietly waiting for them. Returning to space meant dying in vain. Belsa, the matter of finding a place to live is left to you. The price of this planet is very high, but it doesn't matter. Try to find a place with enough space and more comfortable. After Xia Xingchen informed the crew of the basic situation of the Coffin Star, he handed it over to Belsa. Belsa once led an expedition team to explore various planets in the Milky Way. Where has he not been? What people has he not seen? I believe he can handle this matter safely. Great. We can take a break on this coffin planet and treat it as a vacation. Bielsa has a strong interest in exploring the unknown. When he heard that they could also stay on the coffin planet, he immediately smiled. He had already made up his mind. After settling the crew, he would go around and explore the legendary planet of Coffin Planet. Try not to provoke other people. Of course, if anyone dares to provoke us, we will teach them a lesson. Let them know that there are no cowards under my command. Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen said with a smile. Captain, don't worry. We are all very friendly. The crew members on the Evil Thoughts were all veterans who had fought with Xia Xingchen in the north. These people were ready to fight, with malicious smiles on their faces. Xia Xingchen settled the crew members of the evil thoughts and returned to the single dormitory in the science city alone. After he sat on the bed and meditated for a short time, his spirit returned to its peak state, and he was in high spirits. Xia Xingchen took out the personal terminal given to him by Meredith and curiously opened the exchange list. In addition to his father's limb regeneration surgery, Xia Xingchen's biggest concern is the mecha and mecha parts. In the battle with Andre, Xia Xingchen's Revenge Knight was destroyed, and he now needs to build a new mecha. It's best, as powerful as Kirissa's silver mecha called Thunder. Xia Xingchen's mind appeared Kirissa's body fighting the destroyer Gloy. His eyes glowed. He was so envious that his saliva almost flowed out. Why is Kirissa's mecha so powerful? Xia Xingchen flipped through his personal terminal, trying to find the answer. However, Xia Xingchen was disappointed. The mechas and related parts he could find were the latest models available on the market, and their performance parameters were extremely powerful. However, they did not exceed his imagination. In fact, with the help of Zuo Liheng, Xia Xingchen could also make a mecha with the same performance. Is the mecha manufacturing of Lingju Star only to this extent? Xia Xingchen thought in his mind and kept flipping down and finally found some mecha parts that he was interested in. However, when he checked, the screen showed that he did not have enough authority and at least a mid-level researcher could browse and exchange. Seeing that the condition for a junior researcher to upgrade to a mid-level researcher actually required 100 technology points, Xia Xingchen couldn't help but take a breath. Technology monopoly. Xia Xingchen murmured. Technology is power. Those who control technology control the situation of the war. The technology monopoly of Lingju Star is more serious than other places. It was pitch black outside the window, and the artificial stars in the sky emitted a cold light, like the moon hanging in the sky. It was late at night, and the others had fallen asleep. Although Xia Xingchen was in good spirits, he was bored, and could only choose to sleep and wait for the next day to come. Xia Xingchen just fell asleep, and found that he was dreaming. Since Xia Xingchen got the source of faith of the Mank people, he has had fewer and fewer dreams. In addition to the real history of the Mank people that the Crystal Pyramid wanted him to see, Xia Xingchen has not had any other dreams for a long time. In the dream, the moon outside the window turned into a huge eye, staring at him coldly. When he woke up the next day, Xia Xingchen found himself covered in cold sweat. His pajamas were soaked with sweat, and he felt groggy. The huge eye in his mind was still lingering. Damn it. Xia Xingchen took a hot shower and felt better. As soon as he pushed the door open and walked out, he saw Zuo King standing in front of the door, as if she had been waiting for him for a long time. Xia Xingchen, what the hell are you doing? I knocked on the door so loudly, and you didn't hear it? Zuo King said angrily. I slept too deeply. Maybe I'm not used to the climate here. Xia Xingchen rubbed his temples and apologized to Zuo King. Forget it, I didn't wait too long. Zuo King waved her hand. The reason I came here so early is to tell you a piece of news. Meredith has decided to let you choose your own mentor. I choose by myself? Xia Xingchen was slightly stunned. Whoever I want to choose as my mentor can be my mentor. You wish. Zuo King curled her lips. There are thousands of scientific research departments on Lingju Star, and the research directions are also very different. If you choose a major you don't understand, you will be kicked out by the mentor when you go. You must have chosen a major related to mecha manufacturing, right? This is what you studied when you were in military school. And you also have a qualification certificate for senior maintenance technicians. Xia Xingchen nodded. Yes, if I choose, I will definitely choose a major related to mecha manufacturing. Zuo King took out her personal terminal and handed it to Xia Xingchen. I was free just now, so I made a rough list for you. The professors you can follow are these people. Xia Xingchen took the personal terminal, looked at it carefully for a while, and found that there were only 7 professors to choose from. Chapter 741, Hitting a Wall. There are 3 professors with red circles on their names. They are the professors that Zuo King strongly recommends. They are Roderick, Hayden, and Oslo. These 3 professors have one thing in common. They are all men around 50 years old. All of them are extremely smart, with few hairs on their heads, and wearing thick glasses. 3 of the other 4 professors are younger, but they are all over 40 years old, and their titles are also associate professors. And a professor named Jelan is already 60 years old. Xia Xingchen knows that age does not represent strength, but age represents seniority. The older the professors, the more knowledge they have, and the more knowledge you can learn from them. For example, Zuo Leheng is nearly 90 years old, and is simply a mobile mecha knowledge library. Although Xia Xingchen has an excellent memory, at his current age, he is still far from being able to integrate mecha-related knowledge like Zuo Leheng. Xia Xingchen was a little surprised and pointed at Professor Jelan's name. Why is there no red circle around his name? Is he not good at academics? Zuo King saw that Xia Xingchen was talking about Professor Jelan, and immediately showed a disgusted expression on her face. You mean Professor Jelan? Of course he has no problem with academics. In fact, he is the director of the mecha design department. However, he is a very bad person and stingy. You can't learn anything from him. It's better to follow other professors. For example, my mentor Professor Hayden is humble and takes good care of me. What should I do now? Xia Xingchen asked. Go visit these professors. If they are willing to accept you, then you can follow your mentor and study related topics. You can learn a lot of knowledge from it and earn technology points. Zuo King whispered, I suggest you go to Professor Hayden first. He is my teacher and a student of my grandfather. With your relationship with my grandfather, he will definitely accept you. Zuo King's tone was a little nervous when she said this. The reason why she pushed Professor Hayden so hard was also a little selfish. Zuo King knew that Xia Xingchen was the guardian knight of Princess Crossing, and she and Xia Xingchen could not be together. But she was satisfied to be able to work with Xia Xingchen. Okay, I'll listen to you. Xia Xingchen didn't know Zuo King's little thoughts, and immediately set off for Professor Hayden's residence. What Xia Xingchen didn't expect was that Professor Hayden was not on Lingju Star, but followed the research ship to other planets for a search and investigation. Zuo King was also confused. Professor Hayden was still on Lingju Star yesterday, and she didn't hear any news that her mentor was going out for an investigation. The current situation seemed as if Professor Hayden was deliberately avoiding Xia Xingchen. Zuo King was unwilling to give up and contacted Professor Hayden, who had flown to the outskirts of the southern Great Cross Star region through the superwave communicator. Professor Hayden looked apologetic. Please say sorry to Xia Xingchen for me. There are some things that I shouldn't say, but it would be better if you knew. Xia Xingchen offended Professor Jelan. This miser has gone crazy. He found several other professors at his home overnight and has already communicated with them not to let other professors accept you as your mentor. My inspection mission was also arranged by Professor Jelan overnight because he knows the relationship between me and Teacher Zuo. Professor Jelan, I understand. Teacher, I really trouble you. Zuo King turned off the communicator, her face uncertain. Jelan. Xia Xingchen was right beside Zuo King, and she already knew the cause and effect through her conversation with Professor Hayden. He frowned tightly and searched for the name Jelan in his mind, but found nothing. In fact, it is impossible for Xia Xingchen to have any grudges with a professor of Lingju Star. After thinking about it, this Professor Jelan should be a lackey of Regent Qin Yun, deliberately making trouble for himself. What should we do now? Jelan is a very difficult person to deal with. He holds a grudge. Once he bites you, he will never let go. Zuo King was a little anxious. Otherwise, you can go to Meredith and ask her to arrange a mentor for you. Or, you can choose another major. It doesn't matter. Aren't there still 5 professors? I'll try again. Xia Xingchen is a person who doesn't like to admit defeat. Although he knows that the other professors have been bribed by Professor Jelan, he is still unwilling to give up this rare opportunity. Xia Xingchen knocked on Professor Roderick's door. Professor Roderick opened the door and was slightly stunned when he saw Xia Xingchen. Then he invited him to the living room and personally made him a cup of instant coffee. Professor Roderick is a serious person. He wears a suit and a tie that is meticulously tied. He looks more like an old British butler than a scientist. During the conversation, Professor Roderick was generous in praising Xia Xingchen, but in the end he politely rejected Xia Xingchen, saying that his student quota was full, and he could not squeeze out even one more quota for Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen was not discouraged by Professor Roderick's rebuff and went to Professor Oslo's home. But this time, Xia Xingchen was turned away. The light was on in Professor Oslo's villa, but no matter how Xia Xingchen rang the doorbell, no one came to open the door. As for the other 3 associate professors, like Professor Oslo, Xia Xingchen could not see them at all and could only contact them by phone, and the answer he got was also a rejection. There was even an associate professor named Stanley who mercilessly ridiculed Xia Xingchen, saying that with Xia Xingchen's qualifications, he was not worthy of being his student. Of the 7 professors, 6 rejected Xia Xingchen, and the remaining 1, Professor Jelan, did not even need to think about it and would never agree. Even if Xia Xingchen went to Professor Jelan, he would only bring shame upon himself. A whole day was wasted on this meaningless thing. Xia Xingchen looked up at the artificial stars in the sky that were gradually dimming, and a dark feeling flashed through his heart. Xia Xingchen, forget it. Staying on Lingju Star is the most important thing. Otherwise, you can choose another major. For example, spacecraft manufacturing and weapon manufacturing. These majors must also be mastered. Zuo King has been following Xia Xingchen, watching this stubborn man hit a wall again and again, but there is no discouraged expression on his face. If it were her, she might have cried a long time ago. Are there no other mentors? Xia Xingchen still didn't give up. Zuo King frowned, thought for a long time, shook her head and said, no more. Xia Xingchen sat on the stone steps in front of the institute, looking through Zuo King's personal terminal, and accidentally opened the recycle bin, and found a deleted file in it, which was the professor information of the mecha manufacturing related major. This file should also be made by Zuo King, but for some reason, she deleted it. Xia Xingchen opened it, and his eyes lit up immediately. He found that there were not 7 professors to choose from in this document, but 8. One more. The extra professor was already 70 years old, a yellow man. The photo showed a skinny old man with a messy beard, named Hao Xian. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 742 Super Large Mecha. Professor Hao Xian, why did you delete him from the list? Xia Xingchen asked curiously. Oh, Professor Hao. He has a long career and is very knowledgeable. If it weren't for his weird temper, he would have been the director of the mecha manufacturing department long ago, and Jelan wouldn't have gotten his turn. But he is very stubborn and likes to get stuck in a rut. Plus, the topic he was researching is very problematic. It's been 40 years, and there's no progress. All his students ran away a long time ago. There's no future for following him, it's just a waste of time. So I thought about it, and deleted his name. Zuo King said. Stubborn, likes to get stuck in a rut. This is not surprising. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. Talented people have their own tempers. In human history, there are many weirdos who don't understand the ways of the world. In fact, stubbornness is a necessary qualification for scientific research. That being said, however, the topic he is researching is really contrary to the mainstream. After so many years, let alone the technology points, even the capital chain is broken. He is still doing research with his meager savings. This is already paranoid. Zuo King shook his head. Anyway, I don't recommend you to go to him. I'd rather you change your major and find a mentor in another major. What topic is he researching? Xia Xingchen asked curiously. Super large mecha. This Professor Hao is a fanatical supporter of the big ship and big gun doctrine. Alas, now let alone the Tang Dynasty group, even Northern Heavy Industries is not conducting research on super large mechas. Zuo King sighed. Super large mechas. Xia Xingchen's eyes suddenly lit up. As a professional senior mecha repairman, if someone had told him that he was making a large mecha, Xia Xingchen could have quoted classics and scolded that person. The history of human mecha development has exceeded thousands of years, and it has been proved that there is no way out for large mecha. Not to mention super large mecha, which only exists in the crazy fantasies of those fanatical scientists in the early stage of mecha development. It is not without reason that the height of mecha is concentrated between 5 and 6 meters. This is the conclusion drawn after countless practices. But unexpectedly, in addition to Quasimodo, the chief mecha designer of Northern Heavy Industries, who is superstitious about the idea of giant ships and cannons, there is also a professor named Hanon Lingjustar who insists on the research of super large mecha. The future development trend of mechas will be towards large-scale development. You can find the answer on Lingjustar. Zuo Lehung's words rang in Xia Xingchen's mind. He stood up suddenly, his face full of joy. I've decided. I want Professor Hao Xian to be my mentor. Ah. Zuo King was completely stunned and kept dissuading him. Don't do it. Xia Xingchen, don't try to tinker with any super large mechas. That's a dead end. Zuo King, even if you don't believe me, please believe your grandfather's judgment. I believe him. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly and walked towards Professor Hao Xian's villa. When he arrived in front of Professor Hao Xian's villa, although Xia Xingchen had been mentally prepared, he was still shocked by the scene in front of him. The dilapidated yard was full of huge mecha parts, the ground was overgrown with weeds, and black oil was flowing everywhere. It's hard to imagine that this is the residence of a famous scientist, but it looks like a dirty scrap collection station. As for the single family villa, looking out the window, it was also filled with all kinds of parts, and there was no place to even stand. Most scientists are not particular about details, but there must be a limit. Such a garbage dump is not a place for people to live. Zuo King was stunned when she saw the desolate scene in the courtyard and said with her tongue sticking out, "Treasure house, treasure house." Xia Xingchen's eyes flashed with dazzling brilliance. He walked into the middle of the courtyard, stroked a dirty and rusty mecha engine, and murmured in a low voice, "It is indeed the Saturn engine, the first mecha engine in human history. It is really hard to imagine that the first mecha of mankind is actually powered by electricity. Like the first nuclear fusion engine of mankind, Lunks in one, the Saturn engine is more qualified to be written into the history of mecha development. In fact, the first page of the history of mecha development is a photo of this Saturn engine driven by electricity. This thing is a 1,000-year-old antique. For mecha enthusiasts and collectors, it is simply a priceless treasure. But it was thrown in the courtyard like garbage. Xia Xingchen stroked the rough rusty surface of the Saturn engine, just like caressing his lover, his eyes full of enthusiasm. Every mecha repairman is a mecha enthusiast, and Xia Xingchen is no exception. Take your dirty hands off Xia. My goddess Xia is not someone you can desecrate. Suddenly, an angry roar came from behind Xia Xingchen. A thin old man, wearing a yellow worksuit covered with oil stains, was driving an engineering mecha to transport huge mecha parts. Seeing this scene, he roared, jumped off the mecha, and rushed towards Xia Xingchen. "Professor Hao Xian? My name is Xia Xingchen, and I'm a new researcher. I want to be your student and work with you on a super large mecha project." Xia Xingchen quickly took his hands off the Saturn engine. This Professor Hao actually regarded an engine as a goddess and even gave it a special name. It seems that there is something wrong with his brain, and he is seriously ill. "Get out. You ungrateful guys. Get out of my house." Hao Xian became even more angry after hearing this. His eyes were red, and he cursed at Xia Xingchen and Zuo King. "Xingchen, let's go. You can see that there is something wrong with Professor Hao's work." Zuo King pointed to her head and said. Xia Xingchen wanted to explain to Hao Xian. However, the furious Hao Xian did not give him any chance at all, and even dug out an ancient double-barreled shotgun from the garbage dump and fired a shot at Xia Xingchen's feet. This antique gunpowder gun could not threaten a superpower like Xia Xingchen. However, as a soldier, Xia Xingchen hated being pointed at by others. Even if it was a joke. If it weren't for the fact that Hao Xian was a leading figure in the mecha design industry, and that he was old and had a brain disease, Xia Xingchen would have rushed over and snatched the double-barreled shotgun from his hand and broke it in two. "Zuo King, let's go." Xia Xingchen was already disappointed and turned around and left with Zuo King. "HMPH, you ungrateful bastard." Hao Xian spat a mouthful of phlegm on the ground and cursed viciously. As soon as Hao Xian turned around, a huge shadow enveloped him. Hao Xian then remembered that he was too anxious to stop the mecha and even forgot that there was a heavy cargo on the mechanical arm. The 5-meter high engineering mecha lost its center of gravity and fell towards Hao Xian. Chapter 743 A Person of Sentiment. Be careful. Seeing the engineering mecha falling down and about to crush Hao Xian, Xia Xingchen shouted to warn. The incident happened extremely suddenly. Xia Xingchen was too far away from Hao Xian, and it was too late to rush over. Suddenly, Xia Xingchen's eyes were blank, emitting a faint white light. He raised his right hand and grabbed and pulled in front of him. Swish! Hao Xian felt a huge force grabbing his collar and pulling his whole body backwards. Boom! The engineering mecha fell heavily in front of Hao Xian, raising a thick cloud of dust. Hao Xian's face was pale, and his heart was full of fear. He secretly blamed himself for being too careless and almost being crushed to death by the mecha. A mecha designer who was crushed to death by a mecha. Hao Xian's death in this way would make him a laughingstock in the entire galaxy. Xia Xingchen ran over and was relieved to see Hao Xian was safe and sound. Professor Hao, are you okay? If you are, I will take my leave. Stop right there. Hao Xian patted the dust off his body and stood up, looking at Xia Xingchen in surprise. You kid. You have awakened superpowers at such a young age. And it is mental power. Xia Xingchen stopped, turned around and smiled. Mental power is a D-level superpower. It seems that there is no need to be surprised. You know shit. Hao Xian curled his lips, walked forward, and grabbed Xia Xingchen's hand, as if he was afraid that he would slip away. You said just now that you wanted to be my student? Xia Xingchen touched his nose. I did say that just now, but you scolded me. Okay, I agree. From now on, you will be my student and I will be your mentor. You just follow me well. Hao Xian's attitude changed very quickly, and he was already smiling and patting Xia Xingchen's shoulder and said, Professor Hao. Xia Xingchen was speechless for a while, although he said that he had successfully become Hao Xian's student. However, he always felt that Hao Xian accepted him as a student in order to repay him for saving his life. Hao Xian seemed to see through Xia Xingchen's thoughts and said seriously, don't worry. I only care about talent, not personal relationships. I accept you as a student because I value your spiritual power. Great, Teacher Hao. Xia Xingchen laughed. Okay, come with me into the house. As for your girl, let her go home first. Hao Xian was very anxious. He pulled his wrist and led him into the house. Girl. Zuo King blushed. Although this name was very vulgar, she was still a little happy that others could mistake her for Xia Xingchen's girl. Zuo King waved to Xia Xingchen and said goodbye. Xingchen, I'm going back first. I'll find you when I have time. Xia Xingchen nodded and responded, be careful on the road. Go, go, go. Don't waste time. Time is money. Hao Xian's temper was as impatient as a monkey. Without saying a word, he pulled Xia Xingchen into the room, cleared two spaces on the floor where people could barely stand, and urged, use your telekinesis and move something so that I can see. Xia Xingchen didn't know what Hao Xian was going to do, but the floor was full of mecha parts, and there was not even a place to step. He really couldn't bear it, so he began to use telekinesis to take objects from a distance, move the mecha parts aside, and clear a large area. Xia Xingchen's mental strength was as strong as 10,000 Fu. In the battle with Andre, he even burst out with amazing potential and moved a meteor right in the starry sky a distance of several meters. Cleaning this room was certainly a piece of cake for Xia Xingchen. The room was quickly cleaned up, and Xia Xingchen didn't blush or gasp. Hao Xian clapped his hands and smiled. Good, great. You have plenty of mental strength. You are different from those useless people who are exhausted and out of breath after moving hundreds of kilograms of things. Professor Hao, what do you want me to do? Xia Xingchen looked confused. Let you be my assistant. A capable assistant. I have been working alone, and I'm exhausted. It's not easy to find a genius who is willing to be my student. I couldn't ask for more. Hao Xian laughed. But, I have offended Professor Jelan. If you let me be your student, it means I will have to bear the wrath of Professor Jelan. Xia Xingchen didn't want to hide this. Jelan. Hao Xian was slightly startled, then laughed. Jelan is nothing. With his qualifications, he is not even worthy of carrying shoes for me. You don't have to worry about him. Well then. Xia Xingchen shrugged. Professor, I will follow you in the future. But what do I need to do? I see that you are in good shape, so help me clean the room first. By the way, go buy some wine and snacks, and we will have a good drink together in the evening. Hao Xian said with a smile. Okay, Professor. Xia Xingchen nodded and said. Although Xia Xingchen is now Marquis and a noble of the Galactic Empire, he is from a poor family after all. When he was a child, his father was disabled and bedridden, and it was Xia Xingchen who supported the family with his thin body. He is very good at cleaning. Hao Xian went out happily, saying that he was going to the research institute to tell the staff about Xia Xingchen's following him and make a simple record. An hour later, Hao Xian returned home, stood at the door, and saw the brand new house, and the whole person was stunned. The floor was clean, the windows were bright and clean, and the garbage on the ground was swept and sorted and put into the warehouse. Xia Xingchen even walked out of the kitchen, holding a few delicious dishes in her hands, and said with a smile, Professor, I have bought the wine, the Ironstone brew from my hometown Manastar. Hao Xian was moved to tears. He sat at the dining table, took a bite of the food, and couldn't help but lie on the table and sobbed. Professor, is the dish I cooked not delicious? Xia Xingchen picked up the chopsticks and tasted it. Although it was a home-cooked dish, it tasted very good. Delicious. So delicious. I haven't had a decent meal for a long time. Hao Xian wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I'm afraid of what to do if I can't eat it in the future. How could it be? You are my mentor. If you like it, I will cook it for you every day. Xia Xingchen felt that, although the old man Hao Xian seemed a little crazy on the surface, he was actually a man of temperament. Dealing with such people, you don't need to be so careful, it's actually quite comfortable. Impossible. You will leave me sooner or later. Just like those ungrateful students of mine. Hao Xian sighed, grabbed the iron wine that Xia Xingchen had filled, and drank it all. After drinking, Hao Xian's eyes became redder, and he began to chatter to Xia Xingchen about his past. Xia Xingchen didn't say anything, but listened quietly to Hao Xian's story. It was just like the countless stories of apprentices starving their masters to death. Hao Xian was generous, and imparted all his life's knowledge to his students. However, after these students became successful, they all left Hao Xian. What's more, they even played against him in the research institute, criticizing Hao Xian's super large mecha project, which was an impossible fantasy. Chapter 744, Spiritual Power Painting. Professor, you are a good teacher. There is an old saying in ancient China that there is no distinction between the classes. It is easier said than done. The class solidification in the empire is very serious. The upper nobles firmly grasp the technology in their hands. Not to mention the miners, even ordinary citizens learned the technology of 100 years ago. Even on Lingjiu Star, the professors are very selfish and unwilling to share the real knowledge with others. After hearing Hao Xian's story, Xia Xingchen sighed. The Ironstone wine is mellow and sweet, with a strong aftertaste. Hao Xian's eyes are already drunk. Hearing Xia Xingchen's words, he nodded in agreement. Suddenly he remembered something, and his eyes suddenly sparkled. Just now you seemed to say that your hometown is Manastar. I used to be a miner on Manastar. Xia Xingchen did not feel that he was of humble origin and said proudly, oh no. In other words, you have never received the elite education of the nobles? Hao Xian sobered up and looked at Xia Xingchen in surprise. You can say that. Xia Xingchen nodded. Hiss, if that's the case, things are a bit troublesome. Hao Xian took a breath of cold air, then stood up, took out a piece of metal from the warehouse, and handed it to Xia Xingchen. Do you know what this is? Xia Xingchen took the metal object with both hands, and examined it carefully. It was a piece of metal sheet the size of 2 palms, only 3 millimeters thick, smooth, hard and light, with a layer of complex patterns on the surface, slightly glittering, full of mysterious beauty. I don't know, it seems to be the outer armor of the mecha, but it's too thin and too light. Xia Xingchen shook his head and said truthfully. Hao Xian sighed and said sadly, you really don't know. This is the latest research result of Lingjiu Star, mental power coating. Xia Xingchen was stunned. He suddenly remembered that the shell of Kiris's thunder mecha was so smooth, like exquisite porcelain, and there were beautiful patterns on it. However, the pattern of that mecha was in the shape of lightning. Psychic paint? Xia Xingchen said in astonishment. I'm a senior mecha maintenance technician after all. Why have I never heard of it? Don't say you haven't heard of it. More than 99% of the mecha masters in the world have never heard of it. Psychic paint is only installed on mechas driven by S-level and legendary mecha masters. In fact, mechas equipped with psychic paint are the ultimate combat power of mankind. Hao Xian explained in a low voice. But what is the use of this sheet? I can feel that it seems to have a weak reaction with mental power, just like a mental force sensing device. Xia Xingchen didn't understand. It's hard for me to describe how powerful a mecha equipped with psychic paint is. I can only say that it's a piece of cake to fight 1 against 100. A legendary mecha master driving a painted mecha can even destroy a small fleet. Hao Xian said. Hiss. Xia Xingchen took a breath of cold air. A fleet of the Empire is composed of at least hundreds of large and small starships. A legendary mecha master driving a painted mecha could actually cause such powerful destructive power. As someone who has actually been on the battlefield, Xia Xingchen didn't quite believe it. However, Krissa drove the Thunder Mecha and defeated the Goi in an instant. This was also a fact that Xia Xingchen saw with his own eyes. Psychic paint? What on earth is it? Xia Xingchen held the metal sheet in his hand, turning it over and over, feeling very curious. A kind of super technology that does not belong to humans. Hao Xian said, the technology of the gods, Pandora's box. This power is too powerful. Maybe humanity will perish because of it. Since the spiritual paint is so powerful, why not give it to the military factory for mass production? And then equip the army? Xia Xingchen was very curious. The army is always the first user of new technology. Because the spiritual power coating cannot be mass produced. Hao Xian shook his head. Human technology level is not up to it yet. Then, how is this coating made? Xia Xingchen was even more confused. I don't see how high technology it requires. Maybe a 3D printing device can be mass produced. Hao Xian smiled and handed Xia Xingchen a microscope. Use this. You will see more clearly. Xia Xingchen put the spiritual power coating under the microscope and adjusted the magnification to 100 times. Under normal circumstances, when magnified to such a high magnification, you can see that in the microscopic world, the roughness of the metal surface is like a bizarre primitive jungle. However, what surprised Xia Xingchen was that it was still a smooth mirror under the microscope. Too fine. This kind of fine production process may be processed by Tang Dynasty Group's equipment. Xia Xingchen thought about it and adjusted the magnification to 1000 times. However, it was still a smooth mirror under the microscope. 10,000 times. Still the same. Xia Xingchen was a little confused and adjusted the microscope to the extreme 10 million times. Under this magnification, you can even see the molecular structure. However, under the microscope, the mirror surface is still smooth, without any trace of roughness. Xia Xingchen pointed at the microscope with a puzzled look on his face. Professor, is this thing broken? It can't magnify at all? Hao Xian laughed. The microscope is not broken, and you are not mistaken. An absolutely smooth plane is a realm that human technology cannot touch at all. The realm of heaven and man. This is impossible. Xia Xingchen shook his head decisively. Because of the repulsive force between molecules, it is impossible for them to be arranged so neatly. This kind of thing is simply against the common sense of physics. Does the jump violate the common sense of physics? Hao Xian said lightly. Humans mastered the technology of jump and established the human galactic empire. Thousands of years have passed. Which scientist has figured out the principle of jump? They can only put forward hypotheses to guess the wisdom of heaven and man. This super technology is far beyond the level of human technology. It is outside the human technology tree, like a lonely comet. We can only observe it, but cannot touch it. I don't understand. This extremely tight mental coating is not quite the same as the jump engine. As long as we have the materials and equipment, we can make the jump engine according to the blueprint. Just like workers who make internal combustion engines, they don't need to understand its operating principles. But this mental coating has completely exceeded the industrial level of mankind. The force between molecules has almost disappeared, just like being nailed firmly to the wall. How is this thing made? Xia Xingchen asked blankly. Handmade. When science is helpless, metaphysics has its place. Hao Xian smiled happily and pointed at his head. Humanity has traveled all over the galaxy, but we still know nothing about ourselves. The research on mental power is too backward, and there is not even a complete system. Therefore, some scientists believe that mental power is metaphysics, and this extremely tight mental coating, which represents super technology, is made purely by hand by mentalists with telepathic powers. Chapter 745 Painter. Purely handmade? Xia Xingchen almost vomited blood. If Hao Xian hadn't looked so serious, Xia Xingchen would have thought he was playing an April Fool's joke. That's right. Purely handmade, or rather, pure brain work. Just like sewing buttons, arrange these molecules one by one according to the blueprint, and use mental power to fix them. This is a physically demanding job, and ordinary mentalists simply cannot do it. Hao Xian spread his hands. In fact, it takes even several years to make a large-scale paint job. You can imagine how rare mechas equipped with mental paint jobs are. It's not a matter of a few years at all. Arranging the molecules one by one. Oh my god, how could such a thing be possible? Although I don't know the basic properties of this metal, but I know that Avogadro's constant is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd power, which means that there are roughly this many molecules in 1 mole of the substance. The paint job is obviously more than 1 mole. This is a truly astronomical figure, and even if I count them one by one, it will take me forever. Xia Xingchen made a rough estimate, and was already shocked by this astonishing number. When I saw the mental painting just now, I was as surprised as you. However, the fact is that someone has done it. Of course, there are too few people who can make mental painting. In the entire galactic empire, there are less than 50 painters, even the most basic painters. And every painter is strictly protected by the military and the royal family. Because even a very basic painter can provide at least 1 or 2 super mechas equipped with mental painting in 10 years. Hao Xian sighed. You have a good talent, and have a good chance of becoming a real mental painting master. However, you need a lot of knowledge to make up for it. This takes a lot of time. Oh, forget it. Rome was not built in a day, and the painting was not made in a day. Just follow me and learn slowly. Scientific research work is impossible to be effective in the short term. Hao Xian knew that Xia Xingchen was a mental power user, and he was full of joy. He thought that the top management of the institute had shown mercy and actually assigned him a mental painting master. If this is true, many problems of Hao Xian's large-scale mecha project will be solved. However, Hao Xian found that things were not as he imagined. Xia Xingchen was like a blank sheet of paper, not even knowing what painting was. Just learning this knowledge would take at least 3 months. This was based on the fact that Xia Xingchen had a solid grasp of the basic knowledge. 3 months later, Xia Xingchen still needed to learn how to use telekinesis to move molecules, an extremely delicate operation. In short, the most optimistic estimate was that it would take at least a year for Xia Xingchen to produce a complete mecha painting. Hao Xian was not too impatient to wait for a year. If a mecha painter could be trained in a year, it would be a great success. However, when Hao Xian thought about how he had taken the trouble to train Xia Xingchen into a mecha painter, and then Xia Xingchen would leave him to set up his own business, he suddenly felt that everything he had done had lost its meaning. Therefore, Hao Xian had already made up his mind to let Xia Xingchen do some odd jobs with him. After all, his cooking was still quite delicious. As for Xia Xingchen, he didn't think so much. He was already deeply fascinated by mental painting. Xia Xingchen asked Hao Xian for a list of knowledge that he needed to learn. These books can be borrowed from the library in the Science City. In the next few days, Xia Xingchen went to Hao Xian's house to help clean up and do some physical work. The rest of the time, Xia Xingchen stayed in the library without sleep, buried in a mountain of books. Lingju Star is a gathering place for geniuses. There are many weirdos who forget to eat and sleep because of learning knowledge. Therefore, Xia Xingchen's behavior is not eye-catching. Xia Xingchen's ability to remember everything he saw was brought into play at this time. He was like a sponge, greedily learning cutting-edge knowledge that could not be learned in the outside world. Mental mechanics, painting, art, mecha manufacturing, metallurgy. There is too much knowledge to master to become a painter. Xia Xingchen only understood why Hao Xian looked at him with disappointment under high-intensity study. Why did Hao Xian ask if he had received elite education? From the moment they were born, the nobles of the empire began to receive elite education, listen to symphonies, learn multiple foreign languages, and after they became sensible, they had to learn knowledge in various fields such as music and art. Xia Xingchen spent his childhood in dark mines and low shacks. Art is too far away from his world. However, Xia Xingchen is still very young, and it is not too late to learn now. Youth means unlimited possibilities. In the library, Xia Xingchen is wearing glasses and flipping through a thick book. It has to be admitted that human organs are very fragile, such as eyes. After long-term excessive use of eyes, Xia Xingchen's vision has rapidly declined to the point where he can't see things clearly without glasses. Of course, a small operation can restore the eyes to normal vision. But Xia Xingchen has no time to do the operation. Xia Xingchen also understands why most of the researchers in the Science City wear glasses. Glasses, on the one hand, are a symbol of knowledge. On the other hand, like Xia Xingchen, they don't have time to perform this small operation. Environment can affect people. Under the tense academic atmosphere of Science City, everyone is like a clockwork, and no one is willing to waste even a minute of time. Xia Xingchen has witnessed the enthusiasm of the scientific community. Everyone here has a crazy attitude towards the pursuit of knowledge. Death from overwork is the most common way of death in Science City. Just when Xia Xingchen felt that he was a little overwhelmed, Zuo King found him and brought him good news. Clarissa was discharged from the hospital. Meredith invited him to meet Clarissa and arrange a martial arts training plan as detailed as possible. Xia Xingchen stood up from the pile of books, rubbed his temples, let his slightly swollen brain cool down a little, and followed Zuo King to Clarissa's residence. Clarissa's place of residence is different from other researchers. She does not live in an apartment, but lives with Meredith in the director's office in the core area of Science City. Meredith is a super workaholic. She eats and lives in the director's office. She doesn't even have time to take care of her hair, which makes her full of golden hair like the golden thatch that can be seen everywhere in the field. Xia Xingchen knocked on the door and walked into the director's office. She found Meredith wearing a large white t-shirt, showing off her long legs. She was busy in front of the computer with a toothbrush in her mouth. Clarissa was quite free. She was watching the cartoon movie Mech that had just been released on China and Star on a VR device. She cheered excitedly from time to time. Chapter 746, One versus Many. Director. Xia Xingchen looked around the director's office and found it was a mess, just like Hao Xian's home. It seems that most scientists are not particular about details. Xia Xingchen suddenly discovered something. There are no robots on Lingjiu Star, not even the most common housekeeping robots, so these scientists who are devoted to research have such a mess in their rooms. It is extremely abnormal that there are no robots in a scientific holy place like Lingjiu Star. Xia Xingchen, you are here. Sorry, I have some work to do, and I don't have time to greet you. I will leave Clarissa to you. Meredith didn't even look up, still buried her face in front of the screen, her hands moving quickly on the keyboard. Clarissa immediately took off the VR device from her head, jumped to Xia Xingchen's side, hugged his arm, and smiled sweetly. Master, you have to be gentle with Clarissa. Clarissa's voice was sweet, but there was a hint of hatred in her red eyes, which made Xia Xingchen feel cold all over. Seeing Clarissa's reaction, Meredith also stopped working and asked curiously, Clarissa, why did you suddenly change your personality? A few days ago, you obviously hated Xia Xingchen and said that you would rather die than have him as your master. Moreover, you stayed in the hospital and refused to leave because of this matter. Why did you suddenly? Clarissa has figured it out. Clarissa lowered her head and said with a smile, forget it, you two go to the activity room. I have already explained that in the near future, the activity room is yours and no one can use it. Meredith waved his hand and continued to work. Master, let's go quickly. Clarissa is almost out of hurry. Clarissa's little hand pulled Xia Xingchen and said very urgently. Xia Xingchen remained calm and followed Clarissa to the activity room inside the institute. The activity room is very large, covering thousands of square meters, with basketball courts, tennis courts and other sports facilities. The entire activity room is empty, and no one can be seen. After Xia Xingchen entered the door, Xia immediately blocked the door, turned around, and showed a malicious smile on her face. The next moment, a dozen young men came out from behind her. The blonde young man in the lead was Caesar. Caesar's conspiracy failed repeatedly, which made him very angry. Recently, Caesar has not been idle. He used his eloquence and the background of the regent to entangle a group of noble young people on the coffin star. These young people are all children of nobles, with prominent family status, and all have military backgrounds. They have learned martial arts to some extent. One of them, Zuo Bufen's major, said that when he was in the army, he won the championship of the fighting competition. With these people under his command, Caesar felt confident, and then he went to seduce Xia, asking her to find an opportunity to lure Xia Xingchen out, saying that she wanted to show Xia Xingchen a little color. Xia lost to Xia Xingchen, and she was already full of grievances. When she heard that Xia Xingchen was going to be her teacher, she suddenly became willful, crying in pain every day, and refusing to leave the hospital. After hearing Caesar's plan, Xia immediately became happy, and then she left the hospital, and led Xia Xingchen to the activity room as planned. Xia Xingchen, do you know me? Caesar stood up with a gloomy face. No. Xia Xingchen smiled faintly. I never remember unknown people. You. Caesar's nose was almost crooked with anger. Let me tell you, my name is Caesar. Caesar Cyrus. My father is the deputy prime minister. How dare you not know me? I'm so angry. Cyrus. Xia Xingchen's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and his face suddenly turned cold. Chen Tingting was caught by Nicholas, and you tipped off? Although the Cyrus family betrayed Chen Tingting, it was not officially made public. However, because Dayren had investigated the matter very thoroughly, the upper echelons of the empire basically knew the whole story. As one of the parties involved, Xia Xingchen had of course heard about it a long time ago. The Cyrus family dared to hurt Chen Tingting and betray the interests of the miners, and Xia Xingchen was extremely angry. Xia Xingchen thought that Emperor Qin Zhi had wiped out the Cyrus family in a rage, and at the very least, he had thrown several main culprits into prison. Unexpectedly, he would meet Caesar, one of the masterminds, on the coffin star. Ha, Chen Tingting? Who is that? I haven't heard of her. You must have evidence when you speak, otherwise, I will sue you for defamation. Caesar's words were always watertight. Although the truth had been revealed, he would never admit it verbally. However, Caesar's flickering eyes and arrogant smile clearly said, I did this, and you can bite me if you don't agree. Xia Xingchen clenched his hands, his bones creaking, suppressing the anger in his heart. What? Are you scared? You are so scared that you are shaking all over, you coward. Caesar sneered. Yes, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I can't control myself and beat you to death with one punch. Xia Xingchen said coldly. Xia Xingchen exuded a strong murderous intent, which made Caesar shiver involuntarily. I won't argue with you. Just because of you, you are not worthy of being Miss Chris's martial arts instructor. I brought people here this time to let you know that there are always people better than you. Wait, if you lose, go and resign to Meredith yourself. Xia Xingchen's eyes swept over the dozen or so noble young men around Caesar and smiled slightly. Just them? Xia Xingchen's contempt made these noble young men feel very uncomfortable. The tall and strong Zuo Bufen stepped forward and said in a muffled voice, my name is Zuo Bufen. Xia Xingchen, I heard that you are very strong and a hero of the empire. I have never convinced you and want to compete with you. Please teach me. Zuo Bufen took a boxing stance and threw a dozen jabs in a row. The punches were extremely fast and came with a fierce sound of breaking through the air. Xia Xingchen didn't even look at him and said coldly, want to compete with me? Of course. But my time is limited and I have to teach Xia martial arts. You guys come together. One person against all of us. Zuo Bufen was stunned. This, what? Too arrogant. This is an insult. A naked insult to us. Everyone present was shocked. Even Xia, who was standing aside and watching the show with a smile, was stunned. One person fighting so many people. Xia can't do it. Caesar next to Kelasa laughed. Okay, Xia Xingchen. You are looking for death, and you can't blame us. There are no eyes under the fist. Even if you are beaten to death, it's your own fault. As soon as the voice fell, whoosh, 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 dozens of figures rushed out and rushed towards Xia Xingchen at the same time. Chapter 747 Gambling. In addition to Caesar, a total of 14 figures approached Xia Xingchen from all directions and surrounded him in the center. Although these noble young men had never joined forces to fight against the enemy, they had all served in the army and were very familiar with this simplest siege formation. After the publicity of the major media in the empire, Xia Xingchen's reputation as a hero of the empire was well known, and Caesar repeatedly reminded him that Xia Xingchen was terrifyingly strong. These noble young men naturally did not dare to slack off, and they all attacked Xia Xingchen with all their strength. Xia Xingchen stood there, motionless, and when everyone rushed over, his figure suddenly moved. Xia Xingchen's movement was not large, he just tilted his shoulders slightly, took 2 steps to the right, and lowered his head a little. If you don't observe carefully, you will think he didn't move at all. However, all the fists of the noble young men fell into the air. What? Missed? How is that possible? The faces of the noble young men were all surprised. They had already used all their strength, but Xia Xingchen did not make any move at all. With just a few small moves, they completely disintegrated their offensive. There were so many of them, but no one could touch the corner of Xia Xingchen's clothes. His movements were not fast, but he dodged our attacks very cleverly. No wonder he is a hero of the empire. He really has some skills. The faces of the noble young men were all filled with disbelief. They realized that, although they had tried their best to overestimate Xia Xingchen, they still underestimated him. Xia Xingchen stood there with a faint smile on his face and a very relaxed expression. These people's martial arts are not as good as mine. Xia Xingchen's eyes swept over the noble young men and had already judged their strength. From this, it seems that the nobles in the upper class don't like to practice martial arts. Poor in literature and rich in martial arts. Xia Xingchen originally thought that the Qin royal family started with martial arts, and the family tradition was fierce, and the nobles below also followed suit and advocated martial arts. Now it seems that the situation is not the case. Among the nobles, although Qin Ren is a master of martial arts, most of them still regard martial arts as useless dragon slaying skills. Not to mention the nobles who are qualified to come to Lingjiu Star. They think the same as Meredith, that humans are naturally weak, and it is useless to learn martial arts. The universe is so big that there are many geniuses. If it were on other planets, with my martial arts level, I might not even be in the top 10. But on Lingjiu Star, a place that advocates technology and despises martial arts, my martial arts are among the best. Xia Xingchen showed a smile on his face. Everyone, come together. Everyone, hold him down with your body. As long as he can't stand up, all martial arts are useless. Yes, 2 fists can't beat 4 hands. We fight hard to take 2 punches. Are we afraid that we can't hold him down? The young nobles reacted from their astonishment, and after communicating, they rushed towards Xia Xingchen again. Xia Xingchen walked towards them slowly, as if strolling in a garden. In an instant, 14 young nobles were in front of Xia Xingchen. Fists flew everywhere. Xia Xingchen casually threw several punches, using the Teikai technique, to use the opponent's force, to fight the opponent's force, causing these noble young men to be in a mess and collide with each other. Bang, 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 bang. With Xia Xingchen as the center of the circle, the 14 noble young men fell backwards at the same time, a distance of 3 or 4 meters. They rubbed their chests one by one, with blood at the corners of their mouths, and they couldn't get up for a long time. Their faces were pale and ugly, and their eyes were full of disbelief. If they were knocked down by Xia Xingchen, it would be fine. However, they were knocked down by each other's fists. Teikai. These noble young men were well informed, and recognized the boxing method used by Xia Xingchen, and their astonishment was even stronger. There is a boxing proverb, Teikai does not go out for 10 years, and Xingai kills people in 1 year. This sentence means that Teikai is extremely difficult to practice, and it takes at least 10 years to fight against the enemy. But Xia Xingchen is just 20 years old. Why is the realm of Teikai so high? They instantly realized that there was a huge gap between themselves and Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen had deliberately held back against these noble young men. After all, these people were bewitched by Caesar, and Xia Xingchen did not want to hurt innocent people. Therefore, Xia Xingchen only stopped at a certain point, so that they would retreat when they knew it was difficult. Then, Xia Xingchen slowly walked towards Caesar, whose face was pale. Caesar was so frightened that he froze and shouted, "Xia Xingchen, don't come over? What do you want to do? This is the Coffin Star, don't do anything wrong." Seeing Xia Xingchen unmoved, with a cold face, walking towards him step by step, Caesar hurriedly stepped back. Soon, his back hit the wall, and there was no way to retreat. The whole person was so scared that he squatted in the corner with his hands holding his head, trembling all over his body. "Coward." Xia Xingchen walked in front of Caesar, his eyes full of contempt. Caesar looked very smart, but he was almost all talk on paper. If he went to the battlefield, he would be scared to the point of incontinence. To be honest, Xia Xingchen felt sorry for dirtying her hands after killing him. "Go away, don't let me see you again. Next time, if you appear in front of me again, I will definitely kill you," Xia Xingchen said coldly. Caesar was so scared that he ran away in a panic. The other noble young men also supported each other and fled from the activity room. In a blink of an eye, only Clisser and Xia Xingchen were left in the entire activity room. So handsome. Clisser's eyes sparkled with little stars. After all, she was a little girl who had been staying in the research institute of Lingju Star. She had been impressed by Xia Xingchen's chic skills. "Clisser, from today on, I'm your master. I won't force you to do too much, but you still have to have the most basic respect for the master." Xia Xingchen looked at Clisser and said, "No." Kirissa's eyes were stubborn. "Kirissa lost to you last time because she was careless. Although those idiots were not your opponents, Kirissa was still not convinced." Xia Xingchen felt a headache. Kirissa was spoiled by Meredith and was lawless. If he wanted to be her master and teach her martial arts, he had to make her completely convinced. The lesson last time was obviously not enough. "If you are not convinced, let's fight again." Xia Xingchen made up his mind to make Kirissa completely convinced. Okay. Kirissa rubbed her hands and was eager to try. "Wait a minute." Xia Xingchen suddenly laughed. "Of course you can fight. I will accompany you as many times as you want. But fighting like this is meaningless. Why don't we make a bet?" "How to bet?" Kirissa tilted her little head, very interested. "If you win, I will resign from Meredith and say that I'm not qualified to be your master. If I win, then you must not only listen to me and practice martial arts obediently, but also let me visit your Mecha Thunder." Xia Xingchen smiled, but felt ashamed for deceiving the little girl. But there was nothing he could do. He was too curious about the Thunder Mecha equipped with the spiritual power paint. "Okay, then it's a deal." Kirissa agreed without thinking and rushed towards Xia Xingchen. Chapter 748, Recruiting a Disciple. Because of the experience of fighting with Kirissa last time, Xia Xingchen did not spend too much energy this time. After easily dodging her lightning attack, he quickly moved behind her and put his fingers on her throat. "Kirissa, you lost again." Xia Xingchen smiled slightly and released his fingers. "Impossible. Impossible. Why did Kirissa lose to you, a fool again?" Kirissa was furious and shook her head like a rattle. She really couldn't understand why, no matter how fast she was, she couldn't touch the corner of Xia Xingchen's clothes. "It's very simple. I can predict your actions, but you can't predict mine. You are like a muscular man, but because you don't know martial arts moves, I play with you in my hands. Martial arts are the wisdom of our ancestors for thousands of years. It's not that simple." Xia Xingchen explained. "Strong man." "Kirissa is not a strong man." Kirissa looked confused. "I don't understand what you are saying." Xia Xingchen was speechless for a while. His words were not profound, but Kirissa, who only had the IQ of a 7-year-old, couldn't understand. Xia Xingchen suddenly found that she seemed to have received a very difficult task. Is it possible to train a 7-year-old child to become a martial arts master? After being defeated, Kirissa was still unwilling to accept it. After resting for a while, she challenged Xia Xingchen again. Xia Xingchen still defeated her easily without any suspense. "No more fighting." Carissa admits defeat. Carissa sat on the ground tiredly, sweating profusely. Carissa, since you admit defeat, I will be your master from now on. You can call me by my name Xia Xingchen directly, don't call me stupid. This is the most basic respect for the master. Xia Xingchen said with a smile. Okay, Xia Xingchen. Carissa pouted, and finally admitted that Xia Xingchen was her master. By the way, you don't seem to understand, using mental power to imprison others. Xia Xingchen suddenly thought of something. If you had done this earlier, I would have lost. Your mental power is much stronger than mine. Use mental power to imprison others? Carissa was slightly stunned, and shook her head. Carissa doesn't know how to do it. No one has taught Carissa. That's it. Xia Xingchen wanted to explain to Carissa, but the words stopped at his lips. It's not because Xia Xingchen thought Carissa couldn't understand his explanation. It's simply because Xia Xingchen didn't know how to express it in words. Xia Xingchen can easily use mental power to move objects. However, he doesn't know how to describe the whole process. It's not without reason that some scientists consider mental power to be a metaphysical field. A subject that can only be understood, but not explained, is indeed far from the science that can be observed and measured. Forget it, Carissa. Since I'm your martial arts teacher, I will spend 3 hours every day training you. I hope you can cooperate with me. Xia Xingchen thought for a while, and handed Carissa a schedule. This is your schedule. It says what you have to do every day. Carissa doesn't understand it. Carissa looked at it over and over again, without any interest. It doesn't matter if you don't understand it. You can give this schedule to Meredith. She should remind you on time. Xia Xingchen had a headache. Facing the little witch with an IQ of only 7 years old, he was helpless. Next, I will teach you Teikai. This is the martial arts I'm best at. Moreover, I found that there are several completely different energies in your body. Learning Teikai can help you balance yin and yang, and integrate these energies in your body, which will be of great benefit to you. After all, Xia Xingchen is not a martial arts master like Lester, and does not have the ability to integrate all the martial arts in the world. He thought about it, and decided to teach Carissa Teikai, which he is best at. Carissa jumped up immediately, her face full of excitement. Okay. Carissa wants to learn Teikai. Carissa wants to be as good as the stupid Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen was speechless for a while, and said nothing more. He first performed a set of the most basic 36 movement Teikai for Carissa to see. Carissa was very interested at first, but her patience was poor. In less than 5 minutes, she began to yawn, and walked over to Xia Xingchen, and took her hand. Carissa is hungry and wants to drink coffee. Can you take me to the coffee shop, where we went last time? Xia Xingchen knew that Carissa was talking about the coffee shop, where she and Zuoking went. When she met Carissa's red eyes and looked pitiful, she softened her heart immediately. Okay, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. After all, we are master and apprentice, and it's worth celebrating. Great. Carissa jumped up immediately, not looking tired at all. Arriving at the coffee shop, Claire followed Xia Xingchen's example, and ordered a cup of unsweetened black coffee. After taking a sip, she immediately spit out the coffee with a bitter face. It tastes bad. How can you like something so bad? Pa. Xia Xingchen shrugged his shoulders. Different people have different tastes. Besides, black coffee is a drink for adults. You are a child, so you should have a cappuccino. Hearing that it was a drink for adults, Claire immediately pinched her nose and drank the whole cup of coffee. After wiping her mouth, she puffed out her little chest and said, Claire is already an adult. Claire also wants to drink black coffee. Xia Xingchen looked at Claire's little face and immediately felt pity in his heart. After half a day of contact, Xia Xingchen found that Claire was not as naughty as rumored. She just lacked love. On the entire coffin star, perhaps only Meredith was really good to Claire, but Meredith was too busy and had no time to take care of her. After drinking coffee, Carissa was very excited. She found all kinds of excuses to take Xia Xingchen around the science city and introduce her favorite things. Xia Xingchen knew very well that she was doing the job of a nanny, helping Meredith take care of Carissa. But seeing Carissa's pitiful eyes, she couldn't refuse her anyway. Xia Xingchen, come up quickly. Come on. Kirissa took Xia Xingchen to the top of the tallest building in the science city, pointed to a large piece of desolate and barren reddish-brown land in the distance, and said excitedly, "Is it beautiful?" Kirissa likes the scenery here the most. When Kirissa is in a bad mood, she will come to this place alone and stay there for a whole day. "Kirissa, you are longing for the outside world, right?" Xia Xingchen said softly. "Yeah." Kirissa dreams of going outside, leaving the coffin star, and seeing the outside world. Kirissa sat on the eaves of the high building, her eyes full of longing. "I will find a chance to propose it to Meredith. But before that, you have to lay a solid foundation in martial arts. Then I will have the confidence to tell Meredith." Xia Xingchen said. "Really?" Kirissa jumped up happily. She was so excited that she almost fell down from the upstairs. Xia Xingchen was so scared that he broke into a cold sweat and hurriedly grabbed her and held her in his arms. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 749 set. "Hey, Xia Xingchen, you are so nice. In this world, besides Meredith, you are the only one who is so nice to me. So, Kirissa is going to fulfill the promise and take you to see my mecha Thunder." Kirissa smiled sweetly in Xia Xingchen's arms, feeling extremely happy. "Shh, keep your voice down. Don't let others see you." Kirissa took Xia Xingchen and sneaked into the mecha maintenance hall. The Thunder Mecha was parked in the center of the hall, and several mecha maintenance equipment were placed nearby. A few hours ago, the mecha maintenance technician was doing routine maintenance on the Thunder and making minor data adjustments. Now it was dinner time, and the maintenance technicians had gone to eat, so there was no one in the hall. Xia Xingchen knew that Kirissa took her to see the Thunder Mecha, risking being punished by Meredith, otherwise she would not have acted so cautiously. When she came to the Thunder Mecha, Xia Xingchen looked up at the huge fuselage that was 7 meters high and was secretly shocked. This is the largest mecha Xia Xingchen has ever seen. Just by looking up, he can feel the heavy pressure. Spiritual power coating. Xia Xingchen saw a place with a faint lightning pattern on the leg of the mecha and knew that it was the place where the spiritual power coating was installed. In addition to the legs, there are 2 mental power coatings with lightning patterns on the back and head, one large and one small. In other words, the 7-meter high Thunder Mecha is equipped with 3 mental power coatings. Xia Xingchen couldn't help but touch the lightning pattern and immediately felt a sharp pain in his fingertips. He was shocked by a weak electric current and subconsciously retracted his hand. Ha ha ha. Stupid. Xia Xingchen finally fell for Kirissa's trick. Kirissa laughed. Xia Xingchen realized that it was Kirissa who was naughty and used her mental power to sense the coating and then released an electric current to shock herself. "Kirissa, what are these 3 mental power coatings used for?" Xia Xingchen asked. "Not 3 pieces, but a set. This is a set of excellent quality paint, named Thunder. As the name suggests, it can only be used by a mecha master with electrical abilities. The function is the skill Thunder, which can greatly increase the speed of the mecha." Kirissa knew her mecha very well. A set? Excellent quality? Xia Xingchen was slightly startled and immediately understood that these 3 paints were a set, forming a Thunder coating suit. However, he still didn't understand what excellent quality meant. Oh, Xia Xingchen is really stupid. 2 pieces of paint are of ordinary quality. 3 pieces of paint are of excellent quality. 4 pieces of paint are excellent. 5 pieces of paint are epic. 6 pieces of paint are legendary. There are only 5 levels of mental paint. You don't know these? Kirissa said with a smile. So that's how it is. A mecha equipped with excellent paint is so powerful. If it is legendary. Xia Xingchen was shocked. It turned out that Kirissa's Thunder Mech was not of top configuration, but just average. "You can't see anything from outside. I'll take you to the cockpit." Kirissa lowered the gangway leading to the cockpit. Xia Xingchen followed Kirissa and climbed up the gangway to the cockpit. He immediately found that the cockpit was very small, barely enough for Kirissa and Xia Xingchen. Xia Xingchen barely squeezed to the operating table and sat down, while Carissa pressed tightly against his back and closed the hatch. "Carissa, your mech is too small." Xia Xingchen clearly felt the amazing elasticity of the girl's body, and a faint body fragrance belonging to the girl filled the small space. "There's no way." Meredith said that the thunder mech was specially customized for Carissa, and it has to be equipped with this thunder paint, so the space must be compressed as much as possible. Carissa's face was flushed by the squeeze, and she panted and whispered in Xia Xingchen's ear, "Otherwise, you go out first. I'll try it myself." Xia Xingchen suggested. "No. The thunder mech has a gene lock that will automatically detect the mech operator's gene information. If I'm not in the cockpit, you can't drive it," Carissa said. "Gene lock? Such high-end technology." Xia Xingchen sighed helplessly. In order to understand the mental power coating, he could only operate the thunder in this small cockpit with Carissa in an extremely awkward posture. Identity information confirmed. Carissa. System detection. No abnormality. Mech start. After a short recognition process by the optical brain, the thunder mech engine started. Xia Xingchen drove the mech and made a few simple movements and immediately felt the difference. "It's amazing. How could it be like this?" Xia Xingchen felt that the thunder mech moved more smoothly than any mech he had driven before, just like his own body. This was an indescribable strange feeling, just like when he first drove mech equipped with a mental power sensing device. He felt that he had become a huge mech. Is it because of the mental power coating? It must be like this. Xia Xingchen analyzed it in his mind and quickly came to a conclusion. The reason why he had this strange feeling was because the mental coating on the mecha greatly accelerated the reaction speed of mental sensing. There are two operating modes for mechas without mental coating. One is the mental sensing device, and the other is the old keyboard, pushrod and kinetic pedal on the operating table. Although the technology of the old keyboard, pushrod and kinetic pedal seems to be outdated, it is inevitable for mecha masters to use them when performing some difficult actions in precision operations. The operation gap of mecha masters can only be reflected on these old equipment. Moreover, the higher the level of mecha masters, the more they rely on these old equipment. For example, the S-level mecha master Popovich, the operation mode of his Magneto mecha is very retro, because he has long been accustomed to this operating platform. If he changes to a new one, he will not adapt to it. In 1,000 words, it is actually because the technology of the mental sensing device is not mature enough, so these old equipment are needed for assistance. The emergence of mental coating has greatly made up for the defects of the mental sensing device, increased the mental sensing area, and made the mecha's movement smoother and the reaction speed faster. Awesome. Xia Xingchen couldn't help but sigh at the power of technology. He believed that, if it continued to develop at this speed, humans would soon be able to design a new type of mecha that did not require keyboards, push rods, or pedals. But, it's not enough. Xia Xingchen muttered softly. In his opinion, the mental power coating only greatly reduced the operating threshold of the mecha, and could not really improve the performance of the mecha. Maybe the answer lies in this skill called thunder. Xia Xingchen thought to himself. Through the mental power sensing device, the mecha master can control the mecha and release the corresponding skills, greatly improving the combat effectiveness. Chapter 750, the first spiritual power paint. However, the skills released through the mental power sensing device were still within the scope of Xia Xingchen's imagination. However, the skills on the mental power paint were far beyond Xia Xingchen's imagination. "Claire, I want to experience the thunder," Xia Xingchen whispered. "No. You don't have electrical abilities, so it's impossible to trigger the thunder. And, the mental power required for the thunder is too much." Claire's words were a little nervous. Xia Xingchen didn't take Claire's words to heart, as he was quite conceited about his mental power. After a short mental induction, Xia Xingchen felt the paint responding to him. "Thunder!" Xia Xingchen shouted in a low voice, pouring his mental power into the paint. Swish! The world spun around, and Xia Xingchen felt himself trapped in a huge vortex. The mental power paint was like a greedy monster, madly absorbing the mental power in Xia Xingchen's mind. In an instant, Xia Xingchen's mental power of 10,000 Fu was drained, and the mental power paint was still madly absorbing, regardless of his mental power being exhausted. Xia Xingchen's face was pale, and blood was pouring out of his nose. This was a sign of his mental power drying up. In 3 seconds, Xia Xingchen's brain would not be able to bear the load and would explode. He would pay the price of his life for his recklessness and contempt. Snap. At this moment, a layer of light blue electric sparks flashed on Xia Xingchen's body. With a slight sound, the connection between his brain and the mental power coating was cut off. Kirisa noticed Xia Xingchen's abnormality and quickly used her powerful mental power to cut off the connection between him and the coating. Idiot. 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 Kirisa dragged Xia Xingchen, whose face was covered in blood and whose body was limp, out of the cockpit. With tears in her eyes, she threw herself on him and beat his chest. Cough, cough, cough. Xia Xingchen coughed violently, and blood foam flowed from the corners of his mouth. His injuries were very serious, and he almost endangered his life. However, Xia Xingchen's eyes were extremely bright and full of fanaticism. In the moment just now, Xia Xingchen paid the price of his life to glimpse the true face of the mental power coating. Xia Xingchen was immediately sent to the hospital. After experiencing the top medical facilities in the galaxy, his injuries were under control. Because of the severe overdraft of mental power, Xia Xingchen's brain was slightly damaged, but he will recover in a short time. You are so reckless. Zuo King took care of Xia Xingchen by the bed and peeled an apple for him. It is indeed dangerous, but it is worth it. Xia Xingchen has a new understanding of mental painting. They are not just knowledge in books. For Xia Xingchen, they have a new meaning. This is a subtle feeling that cannot be described in words. Just like the chemist Kekulé who dreamed of benzene rings, the answer was actually in his heart, but he was blinded by reality. Only in his dreams could he see the answer clearly. This is not a simple coincidence. Xia Xingchen also has this feeling. The mysterious veil of mental painting was unveiled in front of him. Of course, this may be an illusion caused by the trauma of his brain. However, Xia Xingchen clearly felt that this was not an illusion. After being discharged from the hospital, Xia Xingchen immediately returned to his single apartment. After preparing a high-power microscope, a molecular arrangement drawing for coating, and high-purity liquid fill metal, Xia Xingchen locked himself in the room, carefully recalling the vast amount of knowledge he had learned recently in the library. After a short period of inspiration, he began to make mental power coating. The first thing Xia Xingchen had to do was to use mental power to move molecules in the microscopic world. This was very difficult, not much easier than moving a planet. After thousands of failures, Xia Xingchen finally found some ways. His original approach was to imagine himself as a little man, the same size as a molecule, and then push the molecule to move to the corresponding position. The result was always failure. Later, Xia Xingchen changed his mind and imagined the molecule as the size of an apple, but it was easy to move it to the corresponding position. This discovery made Xia Xingchen happy for a while. Molecular fixation is not difficult for Xia Xingchen, who has mastered the mental power clone. Xia Xingchen only needs to divide a very small part of the mental power, like an extremely small little man, grab the molecule with his hands, and fix it in its original position. Although the technical difficulty is not high, it is a laborious job. Xia Xingchen's original mental clones could only be divided into 6 at most. But now it means that he has to split his mental clones into thousands, or even an astronomical number that cannot be counted. Fortunately, the split mental clones do not need Xia Xingchen to control them with consciousness. After trying a few more times, the molecular fixation, which is extremely difficult for other mentalists, was also easily completed by Xia Xingchen. The next thing is simple. No, it is simple technically, but in fact, it is the most difficult time. Xia Xingchen needs to place and fix a huge amount of particles greater than Avogadro's constant to the corresponding positions. This kind of work is extremely monotonous and requires great perseverance and incomparable patience. However, the shocking wonders in human history, such as the Great Wall and the pyramids, were built in this way. Xia Xingchen's work is even more difficult and tedious than building the Great Wall. After all, it took a group of people to build the Great Wall, and it took countless years. However, Xia Xingchen is the only one who has to build his own Great Wall in the microscopic world in a short period of time. Time passed by. Xia Xingchen completely forgot the existence of time. When he was hungry, he would take a few bites of military compressed biscuits. When he was thirsty, he would drink some cold water. When he was tired, he would lie on the bed and take a nap. A week later, finally, an extremely complicated mental power painting was completed. The originally liquid fill metal has now become solid and very hard, with a faint white light emerging on it. As long as Xia Xingchen inputs mental power, the painting will absorb mental power to give the mecha more powerful power. This is the most basic mental power painting. Power. Looking at this mental power painting, Xia Xingchen could hardly believe his eyes. I did it. Xia Xingchen stood in front of the mirror and saw that his face was full of fatigue. His long beard covered his face like a dirty beggar, but his eyes were full of fiery enthusiasm. According to Hao Xian, it took Xia Xingchen at least a year to make the first mental power painting, including the time for learning. In fact, Xia Xingchen only took less than a month. Even if this mental power painting is only one piece, not even a set, but the simplest mental power painting is also a mental power painting. Xia Xingchen took a deep breath, calmed down temporarily, threw himself on the bed, and welcomed a long-awaited sleep. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.